you will discover ancient wisdom that has brought contentment to millions of restless hearts across 2,000 years. I am going to share with you Buddhist tales so profound, so transformative, that a single story has the power to completely shift how you experience your life. These are not just stories, they are keys that unlock a peace you may have been seeking your entire existence. And here is what makes tonight different from anything else you have tried. These teachings work even if you have struggled with anxiety for years, even if contentment has felt impossible, even if you have tried everything and nothing has brought you lasting peace. The Buddha once said, "You yourself, as much as anybody in the entire universe, deserve your love and affection." In the next 3 hours, you will discover exactly what he meant, and how this one understanding can dissolve years of suffering. Before we begin, I invite you to share where in the world you are resting tonight. Are you in the United States, listening from a quiet bedroom? Perhaps you are in the United Kingdom, or Canada, or Australia, or somewhere else entirely on this beautiful planet. Knowing we walk this path together, people from every corner of the earth seeking the same peace, creates a profound sense of connection. We are not alone in our longing for contentment. We are part of an ancient river of souls who have discovered that the secret to happiness was never in circumstances changing, but in how we meet the circumstances we have. As we journey through these tales of wise monks, unexpected teachers, and timeless truths, something remarkable will begin to happen. The tension you have been carrying in your shoulders will start to release. The thoughts that have been disturbing your peace will gradually settle like sediment in still water. Your breath will deepen naturally, and you will find yourself drifting toward the kind of rest that restores not just your body, but your very soul. So right now, settle completely into your most comfortable position. Adjust your pillow one final time. Let your body become heavy, sinking into the surface beneath you. Take one slow, deep breath with me now. Hold it gently for a moment, and as you release it, know that you have just taken the first step on a journey that will carry you into profound peace, deep rest, and a contentment you may not have felt in a very long time. Let us begin with our first tale. Our first story takes us to a monastery nestled between mountains, where a young monk named Akira had been practicing with burning intensity for 5 years. Akira was known throughout the monastery for his dedication. He would wake before the morning bell, sometimes sitting in meditation for 8, 9, even 10 hours a day. He studied the sutras with fierce concentration, memorizing passages, analyzing every word, seeking the hidden meaning that would finally unlock enlightenment. He ate sparingly, slept little, and pushed his body and mind to their absolute limits, believing that contentment would come through this extreme effort, through finally achieving the breakthrough he sought. But despite all his striving, despite all his sacrifice, Akira felt further from contentment than ever. His meditation sessions were torture. His mind raced with thoughts about whether he was doing it correctly, whether he was making progress, whether he would ever achieve the peace he sought. The harder he tried to find contentment, the more agitated he became. He watched other monks who seemed to practice with less intensity, yet appeared genuinely peaceful, and this only deepened his frustration. What was he missing? What secret did they possess that he had not yet discovered? One autumn morning, when the leaves were turning brilliant shades of gold and crimson, Akira was assigned to work in the monastery kitchen alongside an elderly monk named Jiro. Jiro had been at the monastery for 47 years, and though he held no official teaching position, there was something about his presence that emanated a contentment so palpable you could feel it like warmth from a fire. He moved through even the most mundane tasks with complete engagement, as if washing a bowl or chopping vegetables was the most important thing in the entire universe. There was no hurry in him, no sense that he would rather be somewhere else, no trace of the striving that consumed Akira's every waking moment. As they worked together in silence, Akira's frustration finally erupted. He could no longer contain the desperation that had been building in him for 5 years. "Master Jiro," he said, his voice tight with emotion, I have been practicing with everything I have. I meditate for hours every day. I study constantly. I have given up comfort, sleep, pleasure, everything in pursuit of enlightenment, in pursuit of contentment. Yet, I feel more miserable than I did before I came here. You, on the other hand, seem to do nothing special. You wash dishes, you sweep floors, you prepare meals. Yet you emanate a peace I cannot even imagine experiencing. Please, I am begging you, what is your secret? What am I doing wrong? Jiro continued washing the bowl in his hands, his movements slow and deliberate, completely absorbed in the simple task. The silence stretched out, and Akira wondered if the old monk had even heard him. Finally, without looking up from the bowl, Jiro spoke quietly. Akira, what are you doing right now, in this very moment? Akira looked down at the vegetables he had been chopping without awareness, his mind completely elsewhere. I am chopping vegetables, he said, though he realized even as he spoke that this was not entirely true. His hands were chopping, but his mind was lost in thoughts about enlightenment, about his practice, about his frustration. Are you? Jiro asked gently, finally setting down the bowl and turning to look at Akira with eyes that held infinite kindness. Or are you somewhere else entirely, thinking about enlightenment while vegetables are being chopped? Tell me, when you sit in meditation for all those hours, where are you? Are you present for the sitting? Or are you thinking about becoming enlightened, measuring your progress, judging whether you are doing it correctly, imagining some future moment when you will finally achieve what you seek? Akira felt something crack open inside him. Jiro had seen directly into the core of his suffering. I am always somewhere else, he admitted quietly. Even when I am sitting in meditation, I am thinking about meditation, about whether I am meditating correctly, about when I will finally experience awakening. I am never actually here. I am always reaching for something in the future. Jiro nodded slowly. This is your suffering, Akira. Not that you have not achieved enlightenment, not that you are not trying hard enough. Your suffering comes from constantly being somewhere other than where you are, from treating this moment as insufficient, as merely a stepping stone to some better future moment when you imagine you will finally be content. But contentment is not waiting for you in some future moment of achievement. Contentment is available right here, right now, when you stop seeking it and simply be where you are. He picked up another bowl and began washing it with the same complete attention he had brought to the first. Watch me wash this bowl, he said softly. I am not washing it to finish washing so I can do something more important. I am not thinking about the next bowl or the bowl after that. I am not measuring my progress as a bowl washer. I am simply here, feeling the warm water, seeing the soap bubbles form and dissolve, noticing how the bowl gradually becomes clean. This moment of washing this bowl is complete in itself. It needs nothing added to it. And in being completely present for this simple act, I touch a contentment that does not depend on circumstances being different than they are. Akira watched as Jiro finished washing the bowl, dried it with complete care, and placed it gently on the shelf. Every movement was unhurried, deliberate, suffused with a quality of attention that transformed the mundane into something almost sacred. But Master Jiro, Akira said, struggling to understand, how does washing bowls lead to enlightenment? How does being present for ordinary tasks bring contentment? Surely there must be something more, some special practice, some deeper teaching. Jiro smiled, and in that smile was the patience of someone who had heard this question many times before, perhaps even asked it himself decades ago. Akira, you are making the same mistake that almost every seeker makes. You are dividing your life into spiritual moments and ordinary moments, into practice and everything else. You believe that sitting in meditation is spiritual, but washing bowls is not. You believe contentment will come from some special state of consciousness, not from the simple act of being fully alive to whatever you are doing in this moment. He placed both hands on Akira's shoulders, looking directly into his eyes. But this division is the source of your suffering. There are no ordinary moments. There are no unspiritual activities. There is only this moment, and then this moment, and then this moment. Each one complete, each one whole, each one offering you the opportunity to be fully present. When you wash a bowl with complete attention, you are practicing exactly the same presence you seek in meditation. When you chop vegetables with total engagement, you are touching the same contentment that the great masters experienced. The difference is not in what you are doing, but in how you are doing it. Are you here, or are you somewhere else? Over the following weeks, Akira began to practice this teaching. It was harder than he had imagined. His mind was so conditioned to seek, to strive, to measure progress, that simply being present felt almost impossible at first. When he sat in meditation, he would catch himself planning his next meditation session, judging his current session, comparing today's sitting to yesterday's. When he worked in the kitchen, his mind would wander to the Dharma talk he wanted to attend, to the sutra he needed to study. But slowly, with Jiro's patient guidance, something began to shift. Akira started noticing the moments when he was actually present, a brief flash of complete engagement while sweeping the courtyard, where there was just the movement of the broom, the sound of leaves gathering, the feel of the handle in his hands. A few seconds during meditation where there was just breath, just sensation, just this, without any thought of achieving anything or becoming anyone. These moments were not dramatic. There were no fireworks, no mystical visions, no sense of achieving some exalted state. But in those moments, Akira touched something he had been seeking for 5 years. A simple, quiet contentment that did not depend on circumstances being different, on him being more enlightened, on anything external at all. It was just the peace of being fully here, fully present, fully alive to this moment, exactly as it is. One morning, 3 months after his conversation with Jiro, Akira was washing bowls after breakfast. His hands moved in the warm water, and suddenly he realized he had been completely present for the last several minutes. There had been no thought about enlightenment, no measuring progress, no sense of this being a stepping stone to something more important. There had been just washing, just water, just this. And in that simple presence, he felt a contentment more profound than anything he had experienced in 5 years of intense seeking. He understood then what Jiro had been pointing to. Contentment was not something to achieve in the future through heroic effort. It was available right now, in the simplest acts, when he stopped dividing his life into spiritual and mundane, into practice and everything else. Every moment was an opportunity to be present. Every activity was an opportunity to touch the contentment that came from complete engagement with what is, rather than constant reaching for what might be. That evening, Akira found Jiro in the garden, tending to the autumn vegetables with the same unhurried care he brought to everything. "Master Jiro," Akira said, bowing deeply, "I understand now. I have been making my life into a constant postponement, always reaching for some future moment of enlightenment while missing the only moment that actually exists. This one. I have been creating my own suffering by refusing to be where I am, by treating every moment as insufficient." Jiro straightened up, his weathered face creasing into a warm smile. "And now," he asked simply, "now I practice being here," Akira said, "not to achieve anything, not to become enlightened, but simply because this is where life is actually happening. The contentment I was seeking through all that striving was here all along, hidden in plain sight, in the simple act of being fully present to whatever I am doing." "Yes," Jiro said softly, "and you will forget this many times. Your mind will return to seeking, to measuring, to postponing contentment until some future achievement. This is natural, but now you know the way back. When you notice you are lost in seeking, simply return to this moment. Feel your breath, feel your body. Notice what is actually here. This is the practice, not once, but 10,000 times. And each time you return, you are practicing contentment. Each time you choose presence over seeking, you are touching the peace that was never actually lost. Years later, when Akira became a teacher himself, students would come to him with the same desperate seeking he had once embodied. They would tell him about their intense practice schedules, their heroic efforts to achieve enlightenment, their frustration that contentment remained elusive despite all their striving. And Akira would smile with understanding and compassion, remembering his own years of suffering, and he would take them to the kitchen. First, he would say gently, "Let me show you how to wash a bowl." This teaching about presence versus seeking is one of the most profound in all of Buddhist wisdom. We create so much suffering by treating the present moment as insufficient, as merely a stepping stone to some better future moment when we imagine we will finally be content. We postpone peace, postpone happiness, postpone allowing ourselves to be okay until we achieve this goal, fix that problem, become that person. But contentment is not waiting for us in some future achievement. It is here now, available in the simplest acts, when we stop seeking it and simply be where we are. As you lie here breathing, can you notice if there is any way you are postponing contentment? Any way you are telling yourself you cannot be at peace until something changes, until you achieve something, until circumstances are different? Can you practice what Jiro taught Akira? Simply being here, in this moment, not trying to get anywhere, not trying to become anyone, just being present to the simple reality of breathing, of resting, of being alive right now. This moment does not need to be different for you to be okay. You do not need to be different to deserve peace. Contentment is here, now, in the simple act of allowing this moment to be exactly what it is. Our second story takes us to a village by the sea, where a fisherman named Daichi had lived his entire life. Daichi was well known in his community, respected for his hard work and dedication to his family. He owned a small boat, had a modest home, and provided adequately for his wife and 3 children. By all external measures, he had a good life. But Daichi carried a heaviness in his heart that he could not shake. A persistent feeling that his life was not enough, that he should have achieved more, accumulated more, become more. Every morning, as Daichi prepared his fishing nets, he would look at the larger boats owned by wealthier fishermen and feel a sharp pang of inadequacy. He would compare his catch to theirs and find himself wanting. When he returned home in the evenings, he would see neighbors with bigger houses, newer possessions, and he would feel like a failure despite working hard every single day. His wife would prepare meals with love. His children would greet him with joy. But Daichi could barely see these blessings because his attention was consumed by measuring himself against others, by the constant feeling that he was not successful enough, not worthy enough, not enough. One day, a traveling monk named Kenji arrived in the village. Kenji had walked across the country, carrying only his begging bowl and his robes, possessing nothing else in the world. Yet there was something about him that drew people's attention. He moved through the village with a quality of contentment that was palpable, as if he had discovered some secret that made him rich beyond measure despite his poverty. People would stop to watch him, puzzled by how someone who had nothing could seem so deeply at peace. Daichi saw the monk sitting by the harbor one evening, watching the sunset with complete absorption, a slight smile on his face. Daichi could not help himself. He approached the monk and asked, "Forgive me for disturbing you, but I must know, you own nothing, you have no home, no possessions, no security, yet you seem more content than anyone I have ever met. How is this possible? I have a home, a family, work, everything a man should need, yet I feel empty inside. What is your secret?" Kenji turned to look at Daichi with eyes that held both deep compassion and gentle amusement. "Sit with me," he said, gesturing to the space beside him. "Let us watch the sunset together, and I will tell you what I have learned." Daichi sat. Though he could barely look at the sunset, his mind was too busy, too restless, already reaching for the answer he hoped would finally bring him peace. Kenji was quiet for a long moment, simply breathing, simply watching the light paint the sky in shades of gold and crimson. Finally, he spoke. "Tell me, Daichi, what do you see when you look at the ocean?" Daichi looked at the water, puzzled by the question. "I see the ocean," he said. "I see where I work, where I catch fish to feed my family and earn my living." "And when you are out on the water, what do you think about?" Kenji asked. "I think about my catch," Daichi admitted. "I think about whether I will catch enough, whether my catch will be as good as the other fishermen's, whether I will earn enough money. I worry about storms, about my nets, about whether I am falling behind." Kenji nodded slowly. "So when you look at the ocean, you do not actually see the ocean. You see your worries, your comparisons, your measuring of yourself against others. You see your thoughts about success and failure, about enough and not enough. The ocean is here, vast and beautiful and generous, offering you its abundance every day. But you cannot receive this gift because you are too busy measuring it, comparing it, worrying about whether you have enough of it." He gestured to the sunset, which had deepened into brilliant oranges and purples. "Look at this sunset. Is it not magnificent? It costs nothing. It is available to the poorest beggar and the wealthiest merchant equally. Yet how often do you actually see it? How often do you allow yourself to simply receive this gift without immediately thinking about something else, without measuring it against yesterday's sunset or worrying about tomorrow's weather?" Daichi realized with a shock that he could not remember the last time he had truly watched a sunset. He had seen hundreds, thousands of sunsets in his life by the sea, but he had not actually been present for any of them. His mind had always been elsewhere, worrying, planning, comparing, measuring. "This is what I have learned," Kenji continued softly. "Contentment does not come from having more. It comes from being present to what is already here. You think you are not content because you do not have enough. But the truth is, you are not content because you cannot receive what you do have. You cannot taste your food because you are thinking about tomorrow's meal. You cannot enjoy your children's laughter because you are worrying about their future. You cannot rest in your wife's love because you are measuring yourself against other men. You have abundance all around you, but you cannot receive it because your hands are always reaching for more. Your mind is always comparing, always finding yourself lacking." The monk picked up a small shell from the sand beside them, examining it with complete attention as if it were the most precious jewel. "I have nothing," he said, "but I lack for nothing. This shell is a treasure to me because I am here to receive it. This sunset is wealth beyond measure because I am present to witness it. The kindness of the villagers who gave me food today, the softness of the sand beneath me, the sound of the waves, the taste of the air, all of this is abundance. Not because I have convinced myself to be grateful, not because I am pretending things are better than they are, but because I am actually here, actually present, actually receiving what life is offering in this moment." He handed the shell to Daichi. "You do not need more to be content. You need to be where you are. You need to receive what is already here. Your beautiful family, your honest work, your health, your strength, the ocean's generosity, the sunset's beauty. All of this is yours right now. But you miss it all because you are lost in thoughts about what you lack, about how you compare to others, about some imagined future when you will finally have enough and can allow yourself to be content." Daichi held the shell in his hand, really looking at it for the first time. He saw its delicate spiral pattern, the subtle colors, the smooth texture worn by countless waves. It was just a shell, something he had seen thousands of times on this beach, but suddenly it seemed precious because he was actually present to it, actually seeing it rather than looking past it to some imagined better thing. "But how do I practice this?" Daichi asked. "My mind is so trained to compare, to measure, to seek more. How do I change this pattern?" Kenji smiled. "You practice by returning, again and again, to this moment. When you notice your mind has wandered into comparison or worry, You simply return to what is actually here. Feel the net in your hands. Taste your food fully. Listen when your children speak. Look into your wife's eyes. Notice the color of the sky. Feel the boat move beneath you. Again and again, bring your attention back to the direct experience of this moment. Not to your thoughts about this moment, not to your judgments about whether this moment is good enough, but to the actual sensory reality of being alive right now. He stood, preparing to continue his journey. This is not easy. Your mind has decades of conditioning pulling it toward comparison and seeking. But each time you return to presence, each time you choose to receive what is here rather than reaching for what is not here, you are practicing contentment. And slowly, over time, you will discover that the abundance you sought was here all along. You were just too busy seeking it to notice it. After Kenji left the village, Daichi began to practice this teaching. It was extraordinarily difficult at first. His mind would constantly pull him into comparison, into measuring, into the familiar territory of not enoughness. But he would catch himself and return. When he was preparing his nets in the morning, instead of immediately comparing his boat to others, he would feel the rope in his hands, notice the morning light on the water, breathe the salt air. When he was eating dinner with his family, instead of worrying about money or comparing his house to his neighbors, he would actually taste the food, actually hear his children's stories, to actually see his wife's smile. The changes were subtle at first. He noticed that meals tasted better when he was actually present to taste them. He noticed that his children's laughter brought him joy when he was actually there to hear it. He noticed that the work of fishing, which had felt like drudgery, contained moments of genuine beauty when he was present for them. The way light played on water, the satisfying feeling of hauling in nets, the smell of the sea. Gradually, something profound shifted. Daichi's external circumstances did not change. He still had the same boat, the same modest house, the same level of material success. But his experience of his life transformed completely. He discovered that he had been living in abundance all along, but had been unable to receive it because his mind was always elsewhere, always comparing, always reaching for more. The contentment he had been seeking through achievement and accumulation was here, available in the simple act of being present to the life he already had. One evening, several months after meeting Kenji, Daichi sat on the beach watching the sunset with his wife. "This is beautiful," he said, and meant it completely. His wife looked at him with surprise. "You have said that before," she replied, "but I have never heard you sound like you truly meant it until now. Something has changed in you." "I am learning to be where I am," Daichi said, taking her hand. "I am learning that contentment is not out there somewhere, in some achievement I have not yet reached, in some amount of wealth I have not yet accumulated. It is here, in moments like this, when I actually allow myself to receive the abundance that surrounds me. I have been a wealthy man all along. I just could not see it." His wife squeezed his hand, and they sat together in silence, watching the light fade from the sky. For the first time in years, Daichi was not thinking about tomorrow's catch or comparing himself to other fishermen or worrying about whether he had enough. He was simply here, present to this moment, receiving the gift of the sunset, the warmth of his wife's hand, the sound of the waves. And in that simple presence, he touched a contentment more valuable than any amount of wealth could ever bring. This teaching about presence and receiving what is already here is essential for anyone seeking contentment. We are so conditioned to believe that happiness lies in acquiring more, in achieving more, in becoming more, that we completely miss the abundance that already surrounds us. We cannot taste our food because we are thinking about the next meal. We cannot enjoy this moment because we are planning the next moment. We cannot receive love because we are measuring whether we are receiving enough love. Our hands are always reaching for what we do not have, and so they cannot hold what we do have. As you rest here, breathing in this moment, can you practice what Kenji taught Daichi? Can you simply receive what is here? The comfort of your bed, the warmth of your blankets, the simple miracle of breath moving in and out of your body, the fact that you are alive, that you are here, that this moment exists. You do not need to achieve anything or acquire anything to be allowed to rest. You do not need to become someone different before you can be at peace. Right now, exactly as things are, there is abundance, not because everything is perfect, but because you are here to receive it, to be present to it, to allow it to be enough. Our third story takes us deep into the mountains, to a monastery where a young nun named Hana had been studying for 3 years. Hana was brilliant and dedicated, mastering the Buddhist texts with impressive speed. She could recite entire sutras from memory, could explain complex philosophical concepts with clarity, could debate the finer points of doctrine with the most learned monks. Her teachers praised her understanding, and she took great pride in her intellectual accomplishments. But there was an elderly nun at the monastery named Chio who watched Hana with concerned eyes. Chio had been practicing for 60 years, and though she held no official teaching position and was often assigned the most menial tasks, there was a depth to her that the other nuns recognized. She moved through the monastery like water, flowing around obstacles, serving without complaint, present to each moment with a completeness that transcended any intellectual understanding. One day, the monastery's abbess assigned Hana to spend a week working alongside Chio in the monastery garden. Hana was disappointed by this assignment. She wanted to spend her time studying, not doing manual labor. She believed her time would be better spent mastering more sutras, deepening her philosophical understanding. Working in a garden seemed like a waste of her intellectual gifts. On the first morning, Hana arrived at the garden and found Chio already there, kneeling beside a bed of vegetables, her weathered hands moving through the soil with gentle precision. "Good morning, Hana," Chio said warmly. "Come, kneel beside me. Today we will weed this section." Hana knelt reluctantly, pulling at weeds with impatient movements, her mind already wandering to the text she wanted to study. Chio noticed Hana's distraction immediately. "Hana," she said gently, "you are not weeding. You are thinking about sutras while weeds happen to be pulled. There is a difference." Hana felt defensive. "Does it matter? The weeds are being removed either way." Chio sat back on her heels, looking at Hana with eyes that held no judgment, only compassion. "Tell me, Hana, what is the purpose of studying the Dharma? Why do you memorize sutras and master philosophical concepts?" "To understand the truth," Hana replied immediately. "To achieve enlightenment, to end suffering." "And have you ended suffering?" Chio asked quietly. The question stopped Hana cold. She had to admit that despite all her study, despite all her intellectual understanding, she still suffered. She still felt frustrated when things did not go her way, still felt pride when praised and hurt when criticized, still felt the constant restlessness of a mind that was never quite satisfied. "No," Hana said softly, "I still suffer, but I believe that is because I have not yet fully understood the teachings. If I study more, if I grasp the concepts more deeply, then I will achieve the peace I seek." Chio smiled gently. "You have it backwards, dear one. You believe understanding will lead to peace, but true understanding comes from peace, from presence, from being fully engaged with life as it actually is. You can memorize every sutra, master every philosophical concept, and still miss the point entirely if you are not actually living the teachings, not actually present to your experience." She picked up a weed, holding it in her palm. "Look at this weed. Really look at it. What do you see?" Hana glanced at it impatiently. "A weed. Something to be removed from the garden." "I see a living thing," Chio said, examining the plant with complete attention. "I see roots that have found nourishment in the soil, leaves that have reached toward the sun, a life that arose and will soon pass. I see impermanence made visible. I see the Dharma teaching itself through this simple plant, not because I have studied impermanence in texts, because I am here, present to this actual moment of holding this actual weed. She placed the weed in the compost bucket. You know about impermanence intellectually, you can explain it perfectly, but do you experience it? When you pull a weed, are you present to the teaching of impermanence that is happening right in front of you? Or are you lost in thoughts about the sutras you want to study, missing the living Dharma that is here in your hands? Over the following days, Chio continued to teach Hana, not through words, but through presence. She showed Hana how to feel the texture of soil, really feel it, noticing its coolness, its moisture, its rich smell. She taught Hana to observe how a plant grew, to witness the daily unfolding that she had previously been too distracted to notice. She demonstrated how to move with complete attention, whether weeding or watering or simply walking between rows of vegetables. At first, Hana found this incredibly frustrating. Her mind constantly wanted to be somewhere else, doing something more important. But gradually, something began to shift. She started to notice moments of genuine presence, times when she was actually here in the garden rather than lost in thoughts about being somewhere else. And in those moments, she experienced something her years of study had never given her: a direct, unmediated contact with reality that was more profound than any concept. One morning, Hana was watering plants when she suddenly saw what Chio had been pointing to all along: the water flowing from the watering can, the way it soaked into the soil, the slight shift in color as the earth darkened with moisture. All of this was the Dharma teaching itself, not as an abstract concept, but as direct, living experience. She did not need to think about impermanence or interdependence or any philosophical concept. She could simply see it, experience it, be it. Tears began to flow down Hana's face. She had spent 3 years accumulating knowledge about the Dharma, but in this moment, she was actually meeting the Dharma directly, without the barrier of concepts. It was so simple, so obvious, so completely present that she wondered how she had missed it for so long. Chio, working nearby, noticed Hana's tears and came to sit beside her. "What has happened?" she asked gently. "I understand now," Hana said, her voice breaking with emotion. "All my study, all my intellectual understanding. It was like reading descriptions of water, but never actually tasting it. I thought knowing about the Dharma was the same as experiencing the Dharma. But they are completely different. You cannot think your way to peace. You can only be your way to peace." Chio nodded, placing a weathered hand on Hana's shoulder. "Yes, and now you understand why the Buddha taught his disciples to practice, not merely to study. The sutras are like maps, pointing toward truth, but you cannot reach a destination by studying a map. You must actually walk the path, and the path is not somewhere else, it is here, in this moment, in this garden, in the simple act of being fully present to whatever you are doing." She stood, brushing soil from her robes. "Continue your studies if you wish. The texts can be valuable, but never mistake understanding concepts about reality for directly experiencing reality itself. The Dharma is not in the books, it is here, in the soil, in the water, in the breath, in the simple act of being alive and aware. This is what you can only learn by living, by being present, by meeting each moment with your whole being rather than just your thinking mind." From that day forward, Hana's practice transformed completely. She still studied the texts, but she no longer believed they contained the answer. She understood that the texts were pointers, invitations to direct experience. The real teaching was always here, always, now, always available in the simple act of being fully present to whatever she was doing. Weeding a garden became as profound a teaching as studying the most complex sutra, because in weeding with complete presence, she was actually living the Dharma rather than merely thinking about it. Years later, when students came to Hana seeking to study with her, she would first take them to the garden. "Before we discuss philosophy," she would say gently, "let me teach you how to weed, not to think about weeding, not to understand concepts about weeding, but to actually weed with your whole being. This is the foundation of all practice. Everything else is secondary. This teaching about the difference between intellectual understanding and direct experience is crucial for anyone walking a spiritual path. We can read every book, memorize every teaching, understand every concept, and still miss the point entirely if we are not actually present to our lived experience. The Dharma is not a philosophy to be understood, but a reality to be experienced, a way of being to be embodied. As you lie here, can you notice the difference between thinking about rest and actually resting? Between the concept of peace and the direct experience of peace? Your mind may want to understand, to analyze, to figure out if you are doing this correctly. But beneath all that thinking is the simple reality of this moment. Breathing happening, awareness present, body resting. This is not something to understand. This is something to be, to experience directly, without the filter of concepts. Our fourth story takes us to a bustling city where a successful merchant named Takeo had built an empire through decades of relentless work. Takeo owned multiple businesses, employed hundreds of people, and had accumulated wealth beyond what most people could imagine. He had a magnificent house filled with beautiful possessions, servants to attend to his every need, and the respect of everyone in his community. By every measure society uses to judge success, Takeo had achieved the highest levels. Yet Takeo could not sleep at night. His mind raced with worries about his businesses, about competitors who might overtake him, about whether his wealth was secure, about whether he had made the right decisions. During the day, he moved from one meeting to another, constantly strategizing, constantly working to maintain and expand what he had built. He ate expensive meals but could not taste them because his mind was always on the next deal. He owned countless beautiful objects but took no pleasure in them because he was always calculating their value, always worried about losing them. One evening, exhausted from another 18-hour workday, Takeo was walking through the market district when he saw something that stopped him in his tracks. There was an old man sitting on the ground with nothing but a begging bowl, and this man was laughing. Not a polite chuckle, but deep, genuine laughter that came from his belly and lit up his entire face. Takeo could not remember the last time he had laughed like that, could not remember the last time he had felt even a fraction of the joy this poor beggar was experiencing. Takeo approached the old man, whose name was Ryokan, and asked bluntly, "Why are you laughing? You have nothing. You sit here begging for your survival. What could possibly bring you such joy?" Ryokan looked up at Takeo with eyes that sparkled with amusement. "I am laughing because a child just made a funny face at me as she passed with her mother. I am laughing because I am alive on this beautiful evening, because my belly is full from the food kind people shared with me today, because I have nowhere I need to be and nothing I need to do. I am laughing because life itself is a miracle, and I am here to witness it." Takeo felt something twist inside him, a mixture of longing and disbelief. "But you own nothing. You have no security, no status, no comfort. How can you be happy when you have nothing?" Ryokan smiled broadly. "Ah, but you have it exactly backwards. Friend, I am happy precisely because I have nothing. Nothing to protect, nothing to lose, nothing to worry about. You, on the other hand, own many things. But do you own them? Or do they own you? Do your possessions give you freedom? Or do they imprison you with the constant anxiety of protecting them, maintaining them, fearing their loss?" He gestured for Takeo to sit beside him on the ground. Takeo hesitated, concerned about his expensive robes getting dirty, but something in Ryokan's presence compelled him to sit. "Tell me," Ryokan continued, "when was the last time you truly tasted your food? When was the last time you watched a sunset without thinking about business? When was the last time you felt genuine joy that did not depend on some achievement or acquisition?" Takeo realized with shock that he could not answer any of these questions. His life had become entirely about accumulation and protection. He ate, to fuel his body for more work. He never watched sunsets because he was always too busy. And joy. He felt satisfaction when a deal went well, relief when a threat was avoided, but genuine joy. He could not remember experiencing it in years, perhaps decades. I have spent my entire life building security, Takeo said quietly. I believed that if I accumulated enough wealth, enough success, enough possessions, I would finally be able to relax, to be at peace. But the more I have, the more I worry about losing it. The more success I achieve, the more I fear failure. I am exhausted, and I do not know how to stop. Ryokan nodded with deep understanding. This is the trap that catches so many people. You believe you are working to create security, but what you are actually creating is bondage. Each possession becomes another chain. Each achievement becomes another thing you must defend. Each increase in wealth becomes another source of worry. You have built a magnificent prison and decorated it beautifully, but it is still a prison. He picked up his simple wooden begging bowl, holding it up for Takeo to see. This is everything I own. This bowl, these robes, nothing else. And because I own nothing, I am free. If someone takes this bowl, I will get another bowl, or I will drink from my cupped hands. If someone tears these robes, I will find other cloth, or I will wear tattered robes. Nothing can threaten me because I have nothing to lose. This is true security, not the false security that comes from accumulation. Takeo looked at the beggar with something approaching envy. But how do you survive? How do you eat? Where do you sleep? I survive the same way the birds survive, the same way the flowers survive. Ryokan replied with a gentle smile. I trust in the generosity of life itself. People share food with me. I find shelter where I can. Some nights I sleep under the stars, which costs nothing and offers a view more beautiful than any wealthy man's ceiling. I have discovered that when you stop grasping, when you stop trying to control and hoard and protect, life supports you. Not always in the ways you expect, not always in comfort, but it supports you nonetheless. He leaned closer to Takeo, his voice becoming softer, more intimate. But I am not suggesting you should give away everything and become a beggar. What I am pointing to is the prison of the mind. You could keep all your possessions, maintain all your businesses, and still be free if you changed your relationship to them. The prison is not in the things themselves. The prison is in the grasping, in the clinging, in making your peace dependent on having and keeping and protecting. Takeo sat with this teaching, feeling its truth even as his mind resisted it. Everything in his conditioning told him that security came from accumulation, that peace required perfect control, that he needed to keep grasping and protecting to be safe. But looking at Ryokan's genuine contentment, at his obvious freedom, Takeo could not deny that perhaps there was another way. How do I practice this? Takeo asked. How do I let go of this grasping when it has become the foundation of my entire life? Ryokan thought for a moment, then said, start small. Tonight, when you eat your evening meal, actually taste it. Not to judge whether it is good enough or expensive enough, but to simply experience the taste, the texture, the nourishment. When you walk through your beautiful house, to actually see it. Not to calculate its value or compare it to others' houses, but to simply appreciate the shelter it provides, the beauty it contains. When you lie down to sleep, feel the comfort of your bed without immediately thinking about tomorrow's worries. He continued, practice holding your possessions lightly, like holding a bird in your hand. If you grasp too tightly, you will kill it. If you hold it gently, it can rest in your palm and bring you joy without being harmed. Your wealth, your businesses, your achievements, hold them all lightly. Engage with them fully, but do not let them define your worth. Do not make your peace dependent on them remaining exactly as they are, because everything changes. Everything is impermanent. And if your contentment depends on things staying the same, you will never know peace. Takeo spent the next hour sitting with Ryokan, asking questions, listening to stories, and most importantly, simply being present in a way he had not been in decades. When he finally stood to leave, he reached into his robe to give Ryokan some coins, but the old beggar held up his hand. "Your company was payment enough," Ryokan said with a warm smile. "You gave me your presence, your genuine attention. That is more valuable than any coin. But if you truly wish to give me something, give yourself the gift of presence. Stop living in the future. Stop protecting against imagined disasters, and actually be here for the life you have built. That would honor me more than any donation." Takeo walked home slowly that night, his mind turning over everything Ryokan had said. When he arrived at his magnificent house, he paused at the entrance and really looked at it. Perhaps for the first time in years, he saw the craftsmanship in the woodwork, the beauty of the garden, the shelter it provided. Not as an investment or a status symbol, but as a simple reality of beauty and function. He ate his evening meal slowly, actually tasting each bite, experiencing the flavors and textures. His mind kept trying to pull him into tomorrow's worries, but each time he noticed this, he gently returned to the actual experience of eating. When he lay down to sleep, instead of immediately beginning his usual mental review of the day and planning for tomorrow, he felt the softness of his bedding, the stillness of the night, the simple miracle of having a moment to rest. Sleep did not come immediately that night, but for the first time in years, Takeo did not fight his wakefulness with anxiety. He simply lay there, breathing, feeling, being present. And in that presence, he touched something he had been seeking through all his accumulation and achievement, a simple peace that did not depend on circumstances being perfect, that did not require perfect control, that was available right here, right now, regardless of what he owned or did not own. Over the following months, Takeo began to practice what Ryokan had taught him. He did not give away his wealth or abandon his businesses, but he changed his relationship to them. He still worked, but he was no longer enslaved by his work. He still owned possessions, but he held them lightly, knowing they were temporary, knowing his peace did not depend on keeping them. He still strived for success, but his worth was no longer determined by his achievements. The changes were remarkable. His sleep improved because he was no longer lying awake, worrying about protecting what he had. His health improved because he was no longer driving himself to exhaustion. His relationships deepened because he could actually be present with people rather than always being distracted by business concerns. And paradoxically, his businesses actually thrived more because he made better decisions from a place of clarity rather than from anxiety and grasping. 1 year after their first meeting, Takeo went looking for Ryokan in the market district. He found the old beggar in the same spot, and Takeo sat down beside him without concern for his expensive robes. "Teacher," Takeo said, bowing his head, "I came to thank you. You showed me that the prison I thought was protecting me was actually destroying me. I am still a merchant, still wealthy, still engaged with the world. But I am no longer imprisoned by my possessions. I hold everything lightly now, and in that lightness, I have found a freedom I never knew existed." Ryokan laughed, that same deep, genuine laugh that had first captured Takeo's attention. "And now you know the secret," he said, his eyes twinkling. "Freedom is not in having nothing or having everything. Freedom is in the quality of your relationship to whatever you have. You can be a beggar and be imprisoned by your poverty, constantly grasping for what you do not have. You can be wealthy and be free, holding your wealth lightly, using it wisely but not being defined by it. The external circumstances matter far less than the internal relationship. This teaching about holding possessions lightly, about finding freedom regardless of external circumstances, is one of the most liberating insights in Buddhist wisdom. We are so conditioned to believe that security comes from accumulation, that happiness requires having more, that we completely miss the truth that grasping itself is what creates suffering. We can have wealth or poverty, success or failure, many possessions or few, And in any of these circumstances, we can be either free or imprisoned, depending on whether we grasp or hold lightly. As you rest here, can you notice if there is any grasping in you? Any holding tightly to how things should be, to who you should be, to what you should have? Can you practice Ryokan's teaching of holding everything lightly? Your thoughts, your worries, your plans, even your desire for sleep itself. Can you hold all of it gently, like a bird in your palm, allowing it to be without grasping at it? This lightness, this gentle allowing, this is the doorway to contentment that does not depend on circumstances, being any particular way. Our fifth story takes us to a mountain monastery where a middle-aged monk named Kaito was struggling with a burden that had followed him for 20 years. Before coming to the monastery, Kaito had been a husband and father. He had made mistakes in those roles, serious mistakes that had caused pain to the people he loved most. In moments of anger, he had spoken words that wounded deeply. In moments of selfishness, he had prioritized his own desires over his family's needs. And finally, in a moment of ultimate selfishness, he had abandoned them entirely, walking away from his responsibilities to pursue what he believed was a higher spiritual calling. 20 years had passed since that abandonment. 20 years of devoted practice and service at the monastery. But Kaito could not forgive himself. Every day during meditation, the faces of his wife and children would appear in his mind, and with them came waves of shame so intense they felt like physical pain. He had sought the monastery as an escape from his failures, but he had discovered that you cannot run away from guilt. It follows you wherever you go, living in your own mind, replaying your mistakes again and again. Kaito had confessed his past to the monastery's abbot, an ancient woman named Setsuko who had practiced for over 70 years. He had expected her to condemn him, to tell him he was unworthy of the monastery, unworthy of peace. But Setsuko had simply listened with complete attention, her weathered face showing neither judgment nor pity, only deep compassion. "Kaito," she had said when he finished his confession, "you have been carrying this guilt for 20 years. Tell me, has it helped anyone? Has your suffering undone the harm you caused? Has your self-punishment brought peace to your former family?" "No," Kaito had admitted, "but surely I deserve to suffer for what I did. Surely I should not allow myself peace when I caused so much pain." Setsuko had looked at him with eyes that seemed to see directly into his soul. "You are confusing responsibility with self-torture. Yes, you caused harm. Yes, you made mistakes. This is true. But punishing yourself endlessly does not undo those mistakes. It only adds more suffering to the world. Your former family is living their lives, either having found peace or still struggling with their pain. But either way, your guilt does not help them. It only destroys you and prevents you from being truly helpful to anyone in the present moment." But Kaito had not been able to hear this teaching. His guilt was too deeply rooted, too much a part of his identity. He believed that releasing it would mean he did not care about the harm he had caused, would mean he was letting himself off too easily, so he had continued to carry it. 20 years becoming 21, then 22, the burden growing heavier rather than lighter with time. One winter morning, Setsuko called Kaito to her room. She was sitting beside a small pond that had frozen overnight, its surface covered with a thin layer of ice. "Kaito," she said, "pick up that stone and throw it into the pond." Kaito picked up a stone from beside the pond and threw it onto the ice. The stone broke through the thin ice and sank into the water below. Ripples spread out from where the stone had entered, disturbing the surface, breaking more of the ice. "Good," Setsuko said. "Now, throw another stone into the exact same spot where the first one landed." Kaito threw another stone. It too broke through the ice and sank, creating new ripples. "Again," Setsuko instructed. Kaito threw stone after stone into the same spot, each one sinking into the water, each one creating ripples that disturbed the ice. After he had thrown perhaps 20 stones, Setsuko held up her hand for him to stop. "Look at the pond," she said. What do you see? Kaito looked. The area where he had been throwing stones was now completely clear of ice, broken by the repeated impacts. But he also noticed something else. The ripples from each stone had spread out across the pond, breaking ice far beyond the point of impact. The first stone, Setsuko said, was your original harmful action. It broke through the surface, caused disturbance, created ripples. This happened. It is in the past. The stone sank to the bottom, and if we left the pond alone, the surface would eventually freeze over again. Becoming smooth and still, life would continue. The disturbance would settle. She pointed to the area where Kaito had thrown the additional stones. But you have thrown the same stone again and again. Not in reality, but in your mind. Every day, you replay your mistakes. Every day, you punish yourself anew for actions that are long past. And each time you do this, you create new ripples, new disturbances. You are not healing the original harm. You are creating fresh harm to yourself and, indirectly, to everyone around you. Because a person consumed by guilt cannot be fully present to serve others. Kaito felt something beginning to crack inside him, like ice breaking. But Setsuko-sama, how can I simply let go of what I did? Does that not dishonor the pain I caused? Does that not suggest I do not care? Setsuko shook her head slowly. Letting go of guilt is not the same as not caring. True responsibility for harm you have caused looks like this. You acknowledge honestly what you did. You feel genuine remorse. You make amends where possible. You learn from your mistakes so you do not repeat them. And then you transform yourself into someone who creates healing rather than harm going forward. This is honoring the pain you caused. By becoming someone who adds light to the world rather than continuing to add suffering through your self-torture. She stood slowly, her old bones creaking, and walked to the edge of the pond. Your former wife has likely remarried or found peace in another way. Your children are now adults living their own lives. They have either forgiven you or they have not. Either found peace with your absence or they have not. But either way, your guilt does not affect them. They are not sitting in this monastery being tortured by your self-punishment. Only you are experiencing this suffering. Only you are throwing stone after stone into the pond of your consciousness. Setsuko picked up one more stone and held it in her weathered palm. I want you to understand something crucial. The person who committed those harmful actions 20 years ago was doing the best he could with the understanding he had at that time. He was suffering, confused, driven by forces he did not fully understand. He was not evil. He was not beyond redemption. He was simply a suffering human being, acting from his suffering. She dropped the stone, letting it fall harmlessly onto the frozen pond without throwing it. And that person no longer exists. Every cell in your body has been replaced since then. Your understanding has deepened. Your capacity for compassion has grown. You are literally not the same person who walked away from his family. You have changed. You have grown. You have spent 20 years in devoted practice and service. At what point does the statute of limitations on self-punishment expire? At what point do you allow yourself to be the changed person you have become, rather than forever identifying with the person you used to be? Tears were flowing freely down Kaito's face now. Tears he had been holding back for 20 years. I want to forgive myself, he said, his voice breaking. I want to be free of this guilt, but I do not know how. I have carried it for so long it feels like part of who I am. Setsuko placed both hands on Kaito's shoulders, looking directly into his eyes with a gaze that held infinite compassion. You forgive yourself the same way you would forgive anyone else who had genuinely changed, who had spent 20 years working to become better, who had devoted their life to service and healing. You acknowledge what happened. You feel the appropriate remorse, and then you release it. Not because the harm did not matter, but because continuing to punish yourself serves no one and prevents you from being fully present to offer whatever good you can offer now. She paused, letting her words sink in. Here is your practice. Every time the guilt arises, every time you start to replay your mistakes, I want you to say to yourself, that happened. I have deep remorse. I have changed. I am released. Do not fight with the guilt when it comes. Do not tell yourself you should not feel it. Simply acknowledge it, and then choose to set it down. Like putting down a heavy stone you have been carrying. You will have to do this hundreds of times, perhaps thousands. The habit of guilt is strong, but each time you practice releasing it, you are creating a new pattern, a new possibility. Over the following months, Kaito practiced this teaching faithfully. It was extraordinarily difficult at first. The guilt would arise with tremendous force, and his mind would insist that he had no right to release it, that suffering was what he deserved. But each time, he would acknowledge the feeling without fighting it, and then practice the release. That happened. I have deep remorse. I have changed. I am released. Gradually, imperceptibly at first, the grip of guilt began to loosen. Kaito noticed that he was sleeping better, no longer waking in the middle of the night, tortured by memories. He noticed that he could be more present for the other monks, more available to offer help and companionship, because he was not so consumed by his own inner torment. He noticed that his meditation deepened, because he was not spending every session replaying the past. One spring morning, exactly 1 year after his conversation with Setsuko by the pond, Kaito was walking through the monastery garden when he saw something that made him stop. A bird was building a nest in one of the trees, carrying twigs and bits of moss. The bird was completely absorbed in its task, fully present to the work of creating a home for its future offspring. And Kaito realized with a sudden clarity that this bird was not carrying guilt about nests it might have abandoned in previous seasons. It was simply here, now, doing what needed to be done in this moment. And in that moment of watching the bird, Kaito felt the last chains of his guilt fall away. Not because what he had done did not matter, not because the harm was erased, but because he finally understood that he could honor that harm most truly by being fully present now, by offering whatever good he could offer, by being the changed person he had become rather than forever identifying with the mistakes of his past. He went to find Setsuko and told her about his experience with the bird. The old abbess smiled warmly. "You have discovered what I have been trying to teach you," she said. "Freedom from guilt is not about pretending the past did not happen. It is about recognizing that you are not your past. You are this moment, and this moment offers you the choice to create healing, to offer love, to be of service. This is how you truly make amends for past harm, not through endless self-punishment, but through becoming a source of light." Years later, when Kaito became a teacher himself, students would come to him carrying their own burdens of guilt and regret, and Kaito would take them to the pond, would have them throw stones into the water, and would share the teaching that Setsuko had given him. "Stop throwing stones," he would say gently. "The original harm is in the past. You cannot change it by punishing yourself now. What you can do is stop creating fresh harm through your guilt, and instead become someone who creates healing. This is true responsibility. This is true compassion, including compassion for yourself." This teaching about self-forgiveness and releasing guilt is essential for anyone seeking inner peace. So many of us carry burdens from our past, mistakes we have made, harm we have caused, and we believe that we must suffer for these things eternally to prove we are good people who take responsibility. But this belief creates only more suffering. True responsibility is not endless self-punishment. True responsibility is honest acknowledgement, genuine remorse, making amends where possible, and then transforming ourselves so we do not repeat our mistakes. We cannot change the past, but we can stop replaying it. We can stop throwing stones into the pond of our consciousness. As you rest here, is there something from your past that you have been carrying? Some mistake, some regret, some action you cannot forgive yourself for? Can you practice what Setsuko taught Kaito? Acknowledge that it happened. Feel whatever remorse is present, and then practice releasing it. Not because it did not matter, but because continuing to punish yourself serves no one and prevents you from being fully present to offer whatever good you can offer now. You are not your past. You are this moment, and this moment is offering you the possibility of peace. Our sixth story takes us to a small temple in a village where an elderly monk named Dogen spent his days in quiet service. Dogen had lived an unremarkable life by most standards. He had never achieved any particular fame or recognition. He had never written important texts or given teachings that attracted large followings. He had simply shown up, day after day, for 60 years, doing whatever needed to be done. Sweeping floors, preparing meals, tending the garden, offering comfort to villagers who came seeking help. Now, at 83 years old, Dogen knew his time was drawing to a close. His body was failing, his strength diminishing. One evening, a young monk named Kenshin came to sit with him. Kenshin was troubled, feeling that his own practice was not progressing, that he was not achieving anything significant, that his life was being wasted in ordinary tasks, while other monks seemed to be having profound realizations and making impressive spiritual progress. "Master Dogen," Kenshin said, though Dogen had never claimed any such title, "I feel I am accomplishing nothing. I have been here for 5 years, and what do I have to show for it? I have swept the same floors hundreds of times. I have washed the same bowls thousands of times. I have pulled the same weeds again and again. Nothing changes. I am not becoming enlightened. I am not even sure I am becoming a better person. What is the point of all this repetition? All this ordinariness?" Dogen smiled gently, his ancient face creasing into patterns worn by decades of smiling. "Kenshin, do you know what I have learned in 60 years of practice?" Kenshin leaned forward eagerly, expecting some profound wisdom, some secret teaching that would finally make sense of everything. "I have learned how to sweep a floor," Dogen said simply. "I have learned how to wash a bowl, how to prepare tea, how to sit quietly, how to listen when someone speaks. I have learned how to be present to the ordinary moments that make up a life. This is everything. This is the whole of practice." Kenshin felt disappointed. Surely there had to be more than this. "But Master, what about enlightenment? What about the profound realizations that the sutras describe? What about transformation and awakening?" Dogen's eyes twinkled with amusement. "Kenshin, what do you imagine enlightenment looks like? Do you think it means you suddenly become someone else? Someone extraordinary? Someone who no longer needs to sweep floors or wash bowls? Do you think awakening means you transcend the ordinary activities of human life?" He shifted his frail body to a more comfortable position. "Let me tell you what 60 years has taught me. Enlightenment is not becoming someone different. Enlightenment is being completely who you are, completely present to what you are doing, completely engaged with this ordinary, miraculous life exactly as it is. Before I understood this, I would sweep the floor while thinking about meditation. Now I sweep the floor while sweeping the floor. This is the whole difference. This is the entire transformation." Kenshin struggled to grasp this. But surely the great masters experienced something more than just being present while doing ordinary tasks. The great masters discovered that there are no ordinary tasks. Dogen replied, "Every moment is extraordinary when you are fully present to it. Washing a bowl with complete attention is as profound as any mystical vision. Sitting with a dying person and simply being there, fully present to their experience. This is as important as any philosophical insight. The extraordinary is hidden in the ordinary, waiting for us to actually show up for our lives instead of constantly seeking something else, somewhere else." He paused, letting this teaching settle. "You ask what you have to show for 5 years of practice. Let me ask you, when you sweep the floor now, are you more present than when you first arrived? When you wash bowls, are you more aware? When someone speaks to you, do you listen more fully? These are not small things, Kenshin. These are everything. This is what transforms the world. One present moment at a time. One genuinely listened to person at a time. one bowl washed with care at a time. Dogen reached out and placed his weathered hand on Kenshin's shoulder. I will die soon. This body has served its time, and when I look back on 60 years, I do not regret that I never became famous or wrote important texts or had grand spiritual experiences. What I treasure is the 10,000 times I swept this floor with care, the 1,000 conversations where I was truly present to listen, the countless bowls I washed with attention, the garden I tended day after day, season after season, watching things grow and die and grow again. His voice became very soft. This is what remains when everything else falls away. Not your achievements or your status or your spiritual attainments, but the quality of presence you brought to the moments of your life. Did you actually live? Were you here? Or were you always somewhere else, chasing something you imagined would finally make you whole? Kenshin felt tears beginning to form. Something in Dogen's words was breaking through his resistance, showing him how he had been treating his entire life as preparation for some future moment of arrival, how he had been dismissing the value of simply being present to what was actually here. How do I practice this? Kenshin asked quietly. How do I stop seeking something more and learn to value what is here? Dogen smiled, that gentle smile again. You are already practicing it right now. You are here, sitting with a dying old man, listening with your full attention. This is practice. This is what matters. When you leave this room, you will sweep the floor again. Do not sweep it while wishing you were doing something more important. Do not sweep it while thinking about enlightenment. Sweep it because it is the floor that needs sweeping in this moment, and you are the one here to sweep it. Give it your full presence, your complete care, and you will discover that sweeping a floor can be as fulfilling as anything else in this entire universe. That night, Kenshin swept the temple floor with a quality of attention he had never brought to it before. He felt the broom in his hands. I heard the soft sound it made against the wood, saw the dust gathering and being collected. He was not thinking about tomorrow or measuring his progress or wishing he was somewhere else. He was simply here, sweeping, and in that simple presence, he touched a contentment that did not depend on achieving anything or becoming anyone. The floor needed sweeping, and he was present to sweep it. This was enough. This was everything. 3 days later, Dogen died peacefully in his sleep. At his funeral, dozens of villagers came, not because he had been famous, but because he had been present. They came because he had listened when they spoke, because he had offered tea with complete attention, because he had simply been there, fully engaged with their lives, making each person feel seen and valued. His legacy was not in books or teachings, but in the countless moments of genuine presence he had offered throughout his 60 years. Years later, Kenshin would tell his own students about Dogen. He taught me that there is no such thing as an ordinary moment, Kenshin would say. There are only moments we are present for, and moments we miss because we are seeking something else. He taught me that the meaning of life is not in grand achievements, but in showing up fully for whatever is here. Whether it is sweeping a floor, or sitting with a dying person, or simply breathing this breath. This is practice. This is enlightenment. This is everything. This teaching about finding the extraordinary in the ordinary, about valuing presence over achievement, is one of the most important teachings for our achievement-obsessed culture. We are so conditioned to measure our worth by our accomplishments, by our productivity, by our progress toward goals, that we completely miss the value of simply being present to our lives. We treat ordinary moments as interruptions, as time to get through so we can reach the important moments. But what if every moment is important? What if the quality of presence we bring to sweeping a floor matters as much as any achievement? As you lie here, can you practice what Dogen taught? Can you value this moment of rest? Not as a means to be productive tomorrow, not as a requirement you must fulfill, but as valuable in itself. You are here, breathing, resting, alive. This is not ordinary. This is miraculous. The fact of your existence, of consciousness experiencing itself through your form. This is extraordinary. You do not need to achieve anything to make this moment valuable. It already is valuable, simply because you are present to experience it. Our seventh story takes us to a mountain path where a young woman named Yuki was making a pilgrimage to visit a famous Zen master. Yuki had read extensively about Buddhism, had studied with several teachers, and considered herself quite knowledgeable about the Dharma. She was making this journey hoping to impress the master with her understanding and perhaps receive some final piece of wisdom that would complete her knowledge. The path up the mountain was steep and difficult. Yuki had brought a heavy pack filled with books, notes from her studies, questions she had carefully prepared. As she climbed, the weight of the pack grew more burdensome with each step. Her shoulders ached, her back hurt, but she pressed on, determined to reach the master's hermitage. Halfway up the mountain, she came upon an old woman sitting beside the path, selling tea to travelers. The woman's face was deeply lined, her clothes simple and worn, but her eyes held a clarity that caught Yuki's attention. "Rest a moment," the old woman said. "Have some tea before you continue your climb." Yuki was about to refuse, eager to continue her journey, but something in the woman's voice made her pause. She set down her heavy pack with relief and accepted a cup of tea. The old woman poured with slow, deliberate movements, completely absorbed in the simple act of serving tea. "You are going to see Master Hakuin," the old woman observed. It was not a question. "Yes," Yuki replied. "I have been studying Buddhism for many years, and I hope to receive his final teaching, the wisdom that will complete my understanding." The old woman smiled slightly. "And what do you carry in that heavy pack?" "My books," Yuki said with some pride. "Texts I have studied, notes I have taken, questions I have prepared for the master. I want to show him the depth of my study." The old woman nodded slowly, sipping her own tea. "Tell me, in all your study, have you learned how to drink tea?" Yuki felt confused by the question. "Of course I know how to drink tea. Everyone knows how to drink tea." "Then show me," the old woman said simply. Yuki lifted her cup and drank. But even as she did, she realized her mind was not present for the experience. She was thinking about the master she would meet, about the questions she wanted to ask, about what she would say to impress him. The tea passed her lips, but she could not have said what it tasted like. The old woman watched this with knowing eyes. "You are holding a cup of excellent tea," she said gently. "Tea I picked and prepared myself with great care. But you are not actually drinking it. Your mind is already up the mountain, seeking something from someone else, while you completely miss what is being offered to you right here, right now." Yuki felt something shift inside her. She looked at the old woman more carefully and saw in her weathered face a depth that reminded her of descriptions she had read of enlightened masters. "Who are you?" she asked quietly. "I am someone who knows how to make tea," the old woman replied with a gentle smile. "I am someone who is here when I am here, rather than always being somewhere else in my thoughts. This is all I have learned in 70 years of practice, but it is everything." She poured more tea into Yuki's cup. "Now drink this tea, not the idea of tea. Not while thinking about tea or planning what to say about tea. Actually, drink it. Be present for this moment of tea meeting your lips, your tongue, your throat. This moment is offering you everything you seek, but you must be here to receive it." Yuki lifted the cup again, and this time she was present. She felt the warmth of the cup in her hands. She smelled the delicate aroma. She tasted the subtle flavors, the slight bitterness, the sweetness underneath. She felt the warmth spreading through her body. For those few moments, there was nothing else, just the direct experience of drinking tea. No thoughts about impressing the master, no questions to ask, no knowledge to display. Just this, just tea, just presence. Tears began to flow down Yuki's cheeks, though she could not have said exactly why. Perhaps because she realized she had been living in her head for so long, accumulating knowledge about life while missing the actual experience of living. Perhaps because this simple moment of truly drinking tea was more profound than all her years of study. Perhaps because this old tea seller had just given her the very teaching she had been climbing the mountain to receive. "I have been seeking understanding," Yuki said softly, "but I have been seeking it in the wrong place. I thought it was in books, in teachings, in the words of masters, but it is here, in this moment, in the simple act of being present to what is actually happening." The old woman nodded. "Yes, and now you must understand something else. This is not a lesson you learn once and then possess forever. You will forget this teaching 10,000 times. Your mind will pull you back into seeking, into accumulating knowledge, into living in thoughts rather than in direct experience. The practice is not to never forget, but to remember again and again, to return again and again to presence, to the actual experience of being alive." She gestured to Yuki's heavy pack. "Your books have value. Knowledge has its place. But if you carry knowledge as a burden, if you use it to build an identity as someone who knows rather than as someone who experiences, it becomes a prison." Master Hakuin will tell you the same thing I am telling you, perhaps in different words. But you do not need to climb the rest of this mountain to understand. The teaching is here, now, in this cup of tea, if you are present to receive it. Yuki sat in silence for a long time, drinking her tea with complete attention, feeling the weight of years of seeking beginning to lift from her shoulders. Finally, she asked, "Should I continue to the master's hermitage, or should I turn back?" The old woman laughed, a sound like water over stones. "That is for you to decide. But wherever you go, whether up the mountain or back down, whether to study with masters or to sell tea by the roadside, the question is always the same. Are you here? Are you present? Are you actually living your life? Or are you lost in thoughts about life?" Yuki decided to continue up the mountain, but she left her heavy pack of books and notes with the old woman. "I no longer need to prove anything," she said. "I no longer need to impress anyone with my knowledge. I go now simply to meet another human being, to be present for whatever teaching arises from that meeting." When Yuki reached Master Hakuin's hermitage, she bowed respectfully and said, "Master, I came here seeking wisdom, but I've already received the essential teaching from a tea seller on the path. I understand now that presence is the teaching, that being here is the practice, that all my seeking was keeping me from what I sought." Master Hakuin smiled warmly. "Then you have met my greatest teacher. That old woman has been serving tea on that path for 40 years, and she has awakened more seekers than all the famous masters combined. She teaches what words cannot convey, what books cannot contain. She teaches by being completely present and inviting others into that same presence." He gestured for Yuki to sit. "You are welcome to stay here and practice if you wish. But you already understand the essential point. There is nowhere to go, nothing to achieve, no knowledge to accumulate that will make you more complete than you already are. The question is not what you know, but how you are. Are you present? This is the only question that matters." Yuki stayed with Master Hakuin for 3 months, but her practice was completely different from what she had imagined. She did not engage in complex philosophical discussions or study advanced texts. She simply practiced being present. When she swept the hermitage, she swept with complete attention. When she prepared meals, she cooked with full engagement. When she sat in meditation, she sat without seeking any particular state or achievement. And in this simple, direct presence, she discovered a peace and contentment that all her years of study had never provided. When she finally descended the mountain, she stopped at the tea seller's place to express her gratitude. The old woman smiled and served her tea. They sat together in comfortable silence, 2 human beings sharing a moment of simple presence. And in that sharing, the entire Dharma was transmitted without a single word being spoken. This teaching about direct experience versus accumulated knowledge is crucial for anyone on a spiritual path. We can spend our entire lives collecting teachings, reading books, attending workshops, accumulating spiritual knowledge, and completely missed the point. The point is not to know about presence, but to be present. Not to understand concepts about awakening, but to actually be awake to this moment. All the knowledge in the world cannot substitute for the direct experience of being fully here, fully engaged with life as it actually is. As you rest here, can you feel the difference between thinking about resting and actually resting? Between knowing concepts about peace and directly experiencing peace? Your mind may be full of ideas about how rest should feel, about whether you are doing it correctly, about spiritual concepts and teachings. But beneath all that thinking is the simple reality of this moment: breathing, being, resting. This is not something to understand intellectually. This is something to experience directly, right now, without the filter of thoughts and concepts. Our eighth story takes us to a monastery during a harsh winter where a young monk named Sota was experiencing what he believed was a spiritual crisis. Sota had been practicing meditation intensely for 2 years, and for the first year, he had experienced what felt like steady progress. His mind had become calmer, his concentration had improved, and he had even experienced moments of profound peace and clarity that he believed were signs of advancing toward enlightenment. But for the past several months, everything had changed. His meditation sessions had become difficult again, his mind restless and distracted. The peace he had experienced seemed to have vanished completely. He felt as if he was sliding backward, losing all the progress he had made. Worse still, he was plagued by doubt. Perhaps he was not suited for this path. Perhaps he had been fooling himself about his earlier experiences. Perhaps he would never achieve the awakening he sought. Sota's teacher was an old monk named Teshu, who had practiced for 50 years. Teshu noticed Sota's increasing agitation and despair and called him for a private meeting one snowy afternoon. "Sota," Teshu said gently, "tell me what troubles you." Sota poured out his frustration and fear. "Teacher, I feel I am failing. For months now, my practice has been terrible. I cannot concentrate. My mind is more restless than when I first arrived. I had experiences of peace and clarity before, but now they are gone. I feel I am moving away from awakening rather than toward it. What am I doing wrong? How can I get back to where I was?" Teshu listened with complete attention, his weathered face showing only compassion. When Sota finished, Teshu stood and walked to the window, looking out at the falling snow. "Sota, come stand with me. Look at this snow." Sota joined him at the window, confused about what this had to do with his spiritual crisis. "Tell me," Teshu said, "is this snow falling forward or backward? Is it progressing towards something or regressing away from something?" Sota looked at the snow, puzzled. "It is just falling. It is not moving forward or backward. It is simply falling according to its nature." "Exactly," Teshu said, turning to look at Sota. "And your practice is the same. It is not moving forward or backward. It is simply unfolding according to conditions, according to what is arising in this moment. You have created suffering for yourself by imposing a narrative of progress and regression onto something that has no such direction." He gestured for Sota to sit. "Let me explain what has happened. When you first began practicing, your mind was like wild grass, chaotic and untamed. Then, through practice, you experienced some settling, some moments of calm. This felt good. So, you began to believe this was progress, that you were getting somewhere, moving toward enlightenment. But you made a crucial mistake. You became attached to those peaceful states. You began to practice not to be present, but to recreate those experiences. You started measuring every meditation session against those earlier experiences, judging each one as better or worse, as progress or regression. Teshu poured tea for both of them, the simple act done with unhurried care. But peaceful states come and go. Concentration comes and goes. Clarity comes and goes. These are all conditioned phenomena, arising when conditions support them, fading When conditions change, they are like weather, like the snow that is falling right now. The snow will fall, then it will stop, then it will fall again. This is not progress or regression. This is simply the nature of snow. He sipped his tea slowly. The mind is the same. Sometimes it is calm, sometimes restless, sometimes concentrated, sometimes scattered, sometimes clear, sometimes confused. This is the nature of mind. And you are suffering because you are resisting this natural fluctuation, because you have decided that calm is good and restless is bad, that concentrated is progress and scattered is regression. But this judgment is what creates your suffering, not the actual experiences themselves. Sota felt something beginning to shift in his understanding. But teacher, if I am not supposed to seek peaceful states, if I am not supposed to try to make progress, then what is the point of practice? Why meditate at all? Teshu smiled. You meditate not to achieve peaceful states, not to make progress towards some imagined goal, but to practice being present to whatever is actually arising. When calmness arises, you are present for calmness. When restlessness arises, you are present for restlessness. When clarity arises, you are present for clarity. When confusion arises, you are present for confusion. The practice is the quality of presence you bring to whatever is happening, not the particular content of what is happening. He leaned forward, his eyes holding Sota's with gentle intensity. Let me tell you something that may surprise you. Your difficult meditation sessions of the past few months have been more valuable than your peaceful sessions of the first year. Why? Because in the peaceful sessions, you were just experiencing pleasant states and congratulating yourself. But in the difficult sessions, you have been forced to practice actual equanimity, to be present even when the experience is not pleasant, to meet resistance and difficulty without running away. This is the real practice. This is what transforms you. Sota sat with this teaching, feeling years of accumulated ideas about spiritual progress beginning to crumble. So, you are saying there is no such thing as progress, no such thing as awakening. I am saying that awakening is not a destination you reach after sufficient progress. Teshu replied. Awakening is the recognition that there is nowhere to go, nothing to achieve, to no one to become. It is the direct seeing that this moment, exactly as it is complete. When your meditation is peaceful, this moment is complete. When your meditation is difficult, this moment is complete. The completeness does not depend on the content. It is always here, but you miss it because you are always reaching for something else, always measuring yourself against some imagined standard. He stood and walked to a small altar in the corner of the room, where a candle was burning. Look at this flame. Does it worry about whether it is burning better today than yesterday? Does it measure its progress toward being a more enlightened flame? No. It simply burns, completely, in this moment. This is its nature. When conditions support a bright flame, it burns brightly. When conditions create a dim flame, it burns dimly. But in both cases, it is completely being what it is. Teshu turned back to Sota. You are like this flame. Sometimes your practice burns brightly, sometimes dimly. Sometimes the mind is calm, sometimes agitated. But in all cases, you can be completely what you are in this moment, rather than measuring yourself against what you were or what you hope to become. This complete being, this total presence to what is, this is the practice. This is awakening, not as some future achievement, but as the recognition that is available right now. Over the following weeks, Sota practiced with this new understanding. When he sat in meditation and his mind was peaceful, he simply experienced the peace without congratulating himself or trying to hold on to it. When his mind was restless, he simply experienced the restlessness without judging himself or trying to force it away. He stopped measuring his sessions as good or bad, progress or regression. He simply showed up, again and again, to be present to whatever was actually arising. and something remarkable happened. The despair that had been consuming him lifted. Not because his meditation became consistently peaceful, it did not, but because he stopped making his okayness dependent on his meditation being a particular way. Some days were calm, some were difficult, but all were complete. He was no longer on a journey towards some distant awakening. He was simply here, present to this breath, this moment, this life. One spring morning, Sota was sitting in meditation when he suddenly laughed out loud. The other monks looked at him with surprise. One did not usually laugh during meditation, but Sota could not help himself. He had just seen clearly that he had been seeking awakening for 2 years, when awakening had been here all along. He had been like someone searching desperately for their glasses while wearing them, running around in confusion while what they sought was already right there. After the meditation session, Teshu approached Sota with a knowing smile. "You laughed," he said simply. "I saw it." Sota replied, still grinning. "I saw that I have been complete all along, that there was nowhere to go, nothing to achieve. I have been so busy seeking awakening that I missed the fact that I was already awake, already here, already whole. The only thing missing was the recognition of what was already true." Teshu placed a hand on Sota's shoulder. "Yes, and you will forget this many times. The mind's habit of seeking is strong, but now you know the way back. When you notice yourself measuring progress, seeking some future state, judging your experience as good or bad, you can simply return to this recognition. Here, now, complete, already whole. This is it. This has always been it." This teaching about letting go of progress, narratives, and being present to what is actually arising is essential for anyone on a spiritual path. We are so conditioned to think in terms of progress, of getting somewhere, of improving ourselves, that we bring this same mentality to spiritual practice. We measure our meditation sessions, judge our experiences, create hierarchies of states from less enlightened to more enlightened. But this entire framework creates suffering because it makes our peace conditional on having particular experiences, on making particular progress. The truth is simpler and more immediate. There is no ladder to climb, no destination to reach. There is only this moment, and the question of whether you are present for it or lost in thoughts about where you should be, how you should be progressing, what you should be achieving. When you let go of the progress narrative, when you stop measuring and judging and comparing, you discover that peace is available right now, not as something to achieve, but as what remains when you stop seeking it. As you rest here, can you let go of any ideas about how well you are resting, about whether you are making progress towards sleep, about whether this is a good rest session or a bad one? Can you simply be here, present to this moment exactly as it is, without measuring it against any standard? This moment is complete. You are complete. There is nowhere to go, nothing to achieve. Just this, just now, just being. Our 9th story takes us to a bustling village where a potter named Haruki had spent 40 years perfecting his craft. Haruki was known throughout the region for his exceptional pottery bowls, vases, and teacups of extraordinary beauty and precision. Each piece was flawless, each curve perfect, each glaze applied with masterful skill. Collectors would pay high prices for his work, and other potters would study his techniques hoping to replicate his perfection. But Haruki lived in constant anxiety. Every piece he created had to be perfect. If he noticed even the slightest imperfection, a tiny bubble in the glaze, a curve that was fractionally off, he would destroy the piece immediately, smashing it in frustration. He worked long hours, drove himself relentlessly, and his pursuit of perfection had cost him his health, his relationships, and any sense of joy in his craft. What had once been a source of pleasure had become a prison of impossible standards. One day, a wandering Zen master named Bankei came through the village. Bankei was known for his unconventional teaching style and his ability to see directly into the heart of people's suffering. When he saw Haruki's pottery displayed in the market, he was impressed by the technical mastery, but noticed something missing. The pieces were perfect, but they were cold. They lacked warmth, humanity, the quality that makes art truly alive. Bankei visited Haruki's workshop and found the potter hunched over his wheel, his face tight with concentration, his movements tense. Scattered around the workshop were shards of broken pottery pieces Haruki had deemed imperfect and destroyed. "May I watch you work?" Bankei asked gently. Haruki, recognizing the famous teacher, nodded and continued his work. He was creating a tea bowl, his hands shaping the clay with practiced precision. But as the bowl took form, Haruki noticed a slight asymmetry in the rim. His face darkened with frustration. Before Bankei could speak, Haruki had lifted the bowl from the wheel and smashed it on the floor. "Why did you destroy that?" Bankei asked, though he already knew the answer. "It was imperfect," Haruki said bitterly. "The rim was not symmetrical. I cannot sell imperfect work. My reputation depends on absolute perfection." Bankei nodded slowly. "And are you perfect, Haruki?" The question stopped the potter cold. "No, of course not. I am just a man." "Then how can an imperfect man create perfect objects?" Bankei asked with a gentle smile. "Your imperfection flows through your hands into everything you touch. You cannot escape it. You are trying to create something that does not exist in nature, absolute perfection. And in doing so, you are destroying not just your pottery, but yourself." He picked up one of the shards from the destroyed bowl. This piece was beautiful. Yes, it had asymmetry, but that asymmetry gave it character, made it unique, made it alive. In Japanese aesthetics, we have a concept called wabi-sabi, the beauty of imperfection, the elegance of things that are impermanent and incomplete. Your technically perfect pieces lack this quality. They are impressive, but not moving. They do not touch the heart because they are trying to be something no human creation can be absolutely flawless. Haruki felt defensive. "But my customers expect perfection. My reputation is built on it. If I start accepting imperfection, I will lose everything I have worked for." Bankei sat down on a stool, looking at Haruki with eyes full of compassion. "Tell me, do you enjoy your work anymore? Does creating pottery bring you joy? Or has your pursuit of perfection turned something you love into something that tortures you?" Haruki had to admit the truth. "I hate it now. Every piece I create is an opportunity to fail. Every tiny flaw is evidence of my inadequacy. I cannot remember the last time I enjoyed the feel of clay in my hands, the pleasure of creation. It has all become about meeting an impossible standard. Then you have already lost what matters most," Bankei said, gently. "You have sacrificed joy, peace, and the love of your craft on the altar of perfection. And what have you gained? The approval of people who admire your skill but do not see your suffering. Is this a worthy trade?" He stood and moved to Haruki's supply of clay. "Let me show you something. I am not a skilled potter, but I will create a bowl. Watch." Bankei sat at the wheel and began to shape the clay. His movements were unpracticed, lacking Haruki's technical mastery. The bowl that emerged was clearly made by an amateur. The walls were uneven, the rim wavy, the proportions somewhat off. When Bankei lifted it from the wheel, it was obviously imperfect by any conventional standard, but something about the bowl caught Haruki's attention. Despite its technical flaws, it had a quality that his own perfect pieces lacked. It felt alive, human, warm. The irregularities gave it character. It looked like something that had been made with joy rather than anxiety, with presence rather than perfectionism. "This bowl is imperfect," Bankei said, holding it up to the light. "But it is also complete. It is exactly what it is. A bowl made by someone who is not a master potter, made in this moment with the skill and presence that were available. I am not ashamed of its imperfections. They are part of its truth, part of its beauty." He handed the bowl to Haruki. "Your perfect bowls are trying to deny the truth of human limitation. They are trying to pretend that perfection is possible, that we can transcend our humanity through skill and effort. But this bowl embraces its humanity. It says, "I was made by imperfect hands, in an imperfect moment, and that is okay. I am still beautiful. I am still worthy." Haruki held the bowl, feeling tears beginning to form in his eyes. He had spent 40 years trying to prove his worth through perfection, believing that if he could just make his work flawless enough, he would finally be enough, would finally be worthy of love and respect. But this amateur bowl, with all its obvious imperfections, he was teaching him something his perfect pieces never had. That worthiness does not require perfection, that beauty can exist in and even because of imperfection. "What should I do?" Haruki asked, his voice breaking. "How do I let go of 40 years of perfectionism? How do I accept imperfection when everything in me screams that it is not good enough?" Bankei smiled warmly. "You practice, you create a piece, and when you notice an imperfection, instead of immediately destroying it, you pause, you breathe, you ask yourself, does this imperfection make the piece less useful? Does it make it less beautiful? Or is it just different from my idea of how it should be?" And sometimes, you allow the piece to exist with its imperfection. You let it be what it is, rather than what you think it should be. He continued, "This is not about becoming sloppy or abandoning skill. You can still create with care, still use all the mastery you have developed, but you release the demand for absolute perfection. You allow your work to be human, to show the marks of the hands that made it, to have the character that comes from genuine creation rather than anxious replication of an ideal." Over the following months, Haruki practiced this teaching. It was extraordinarily difficult. His perfectionism was deeply ingrained, a habit of 40 years. Every time he saw an imperfection in his work, his immediate impulse was to destroy it. But he would pause, breathe, and ask Bankei's questions. Does this imperfection make it less useful, less beautiful, or just different from my ideal? Slowly, he began to allow some pieces to exist with their imperfections. A bowl with a slightly uneven rim, a vase with a small irregularity in the glaze, a cup with a subtle asymmetry. At first, this felt like failure, like lowering his standards. But as he lived with these pieces, something shifted. He began to see that the imperfections gave each piece its unique character, its particular beauty. No two pieces were exactly alike. Each one carried the marks of its specific moment of creation. And something else happened. As Haruki released his grip on perfection, joy began to return to his work. He started to enjoy the feel of clay in his hands again. He could appreciate the process of creation rather than just anxiously focusing on the outcome. His shoulders relaxed, his face softened. Creating pottery became once again what it had been when he first started, a source of pleasure and meaning rather than a source of stress. When customers saw his new work, the reactions were mixed. Some preferred his earlier perfect pieces and found the new work disappointing, but others were deeply moved by the new warmth and humanity in his pottery. These pieces touched something in them that the perfect pieces never had. They saw in the imperfections a reflection of their own imperfect humanity, and this brought them comfort rather than discomfort. One evening, a year after meeting Bankei, Haruki created a tea bowl that captured everything he had learned. It was skillfully made, showing all his years of mastery. But it also had a beautiful irregularity in its form, a slight wobble that made it dance with life. The glaze had settled unevenly, creating unexpected patterns. By his old standards, this bowl would have been immediately destroyed. But Haruki looked at it and saw it was the most beautiful piece he had ever made. Precisely because it was imperfect. Precisely because it showed the humanity of its maker. He sent word to Bankei, who came to see the bowl. The old master held it carefully, examining it from all angles, feeling its weight, running his fingers over its surface. Finally, he looked at Haruki with eyes shining with appreciation. "This is the work of a master," he said. "Not because it is perfect, but because it is complete. It is fully itself, not trying to be something it is not apologizing for its imperfections. You have finally learned to create with acceptance rather than anxiety, with presence rather than perfectionism. This bowl is a teaching in itself. Years later, when people asked Haruki about his transformation from creating perfect but cold pottery to creating warm, imperfect, deeply moving pieces, he would say, "I spent 40 years trying to prove my worth through perfection. I believed that if I could just make my work flawless enough, I would finally be enough. But perfection was a prison that separated me from joy, from humanity, from life itself. When I learned to accept imperfection, when I learned that my worth was not conditional on being flawless, everything changed. My work became alive because I was finally alive in the making of it." This teaching about accepting imperfection and releasing perfectionism is essential for anyone seeking contentment in our achievement-obsessed culture. We are taught from childhood that our worth depends on our performance, that we must constantly improve, that anything less than perfect is failure. This conditioning creates immense suffering as we measure ourselves against impossible standards, judge ourselves harshly for our limitations, and miss the beauty and humanity that exist precisely in our imperfection. The Japanese concept of wabi-sabi that Bankei mentioned recognizes that true beauty often lies in imperfection, impermanence, and incompleteness. The crack in a tea bowl, the asymmetry in a vase, the weathering of wood. These are not flaws to be hidden, but qualities to be appreciated. They show the passage of time, the touch of human hands, the reality that nothing remains unchanged. Nothing achieves absolute perfection. As you rest here, can you practice accepting your own imperfection? Perhaps your body is not in the perfect position. Perhaps your mind is not achieving the perfect state of peace. Perhaps this moment of rest is not unfolding exactly as you think it should. Can you release the demand for perfection and simply allow this moment to be what it is? Your imperfection is not a flaw to be fixed. It is part of your humanity, part of your unique beauty. You do not need to be perfect to be worthy of rest, worthy of peace, worthy of contentment. You are enough, exactly as you are, right now. Our 10th story takes us to a coastal village where a fisherman named Masaru had lived his entire life. Masaru was in his 70s now, his body bent from decades of hauling nets, his hands gnarled from years of working with ropes and fish. He had lived a simple life, never accumulating much wealth, never traveling beyond the nearby towns, never achieving anything that the world would consider remarkable. One day, a young man from the city came to the village on holiday. This young man, named Takeshi, was wealthy and successful, having built a profitable business by the age of 30. He had traveled to many countries, owned multiple properties, and was admired by his peers for his achievements. But despite all his success, Takeshi felt empty inside, always restless, always seeking the next achievement, the next acquisition, never quite satisfied. Takeshi met Masaru on the beach one evening. The old fisherman was sitting on his boat, mending his nets with patient, practiced movements, watching the sunset with a slight smile on his weathered face. Something about the old man's presence drew Takeshi's attention, a quality of contentment that was palpable despite his obvious poverty and simple life. "Excuse me," Takeshi said, approaching the fisherman. "May I ask you something? You seem very peaceful, very content, but you have so little. How is this possible? I have so much wealth, success, possessions, yet I cannot find the contentment that seems to come so naturally to you." Masaru looked up from his nets, his eyes crinkling with amusement. "Sit down, young man, watch the sunset with me, and I will tell you what I have learned in 70 years by the sea." Takeshi sat on the boat beside the old fisherman. Masaru continued his work, his hands moving with the ease of long practice, while his attention remained fully present to both the task and the conversation. "You say I have so little," Masaru began, "but I wonder if we are measuring wealth in the same way. It is true that I own very little. This boat, these nets, a small house, some simple possessions, But I also own this sunset." He gestured to the spectacular display of colors painting the sky. "I own the sound of the waves, the smell of the salt air, the feeling of the wind on my face. I own the satisfaction of a day's honest work, the taste of simple food after physical labor, the deep sleep that comes from being genuinely tired." He paused in his work to look directly at Takeshi. "Tell me, in all your travels and achievements, when was the last time you actually watched a sunset from beginning to end? When was the last time you tasted your food fully? When was the last time you slept deeply without your mind churning with plans and worries?" Takeshi had to admit he could not remember. "But those things are free," he protested. "Anyone can watch a sunset. That is not wealth." "Exactly," Masaru said with a gentle smile. "Anyone can watch a sunset. But how many people actually do? You have traveled to many countries. But did you see them? Or were you always thinking about business? About the next destination? About proving something to yourself or others? You have eaten at expensive restaurants. But did you taste the food? Or were you always distracted? Always somewhere else in your mind?" He returned to his mending, his movements unhurried. "True wealth is not what you own, but what you can actually experience, what you can actually receive. I may not have traveled to foreign countries, but I have been fully present for every sunrise I have witnessed in this village. I may not eat expensive meals, but I taste every bite of my simple food. I may not own much, but I am genuinely present for my life, and that presence allows me to receive the abundance that is always here, always available." Takeshi felt something stirring inside him, a recognition of truth he had been avoiding. "But I have worked so hard to build my success," he said. "I have sacrificed so much. Are you saying it was all meaningless?" "Not meaningless," Masaru replied gently, "but perhaps misdirected. You have been working to create conditions that you believe will allow you to be happy, enough wealth to feel secure, enough success to feel worthy, enough possessions to feel complete. But happiness does not come from creating the right conditions. It comes from being present to the conditions that already exist. You could continue accumulating wealth and achievements for the rest of your life and never find what you seek. Because what you seek is not in external circumstances. It is in the quality of presence you bring to whatever circumstances you have." The old fisherman held up the net he was mending. "Look at this net. It is old, patched many times. Not beautiful, but it serves its purpose. When I fish with it tomorrow, I will not be wishing I had a newer, better net. I will be present to the act of fishing, grateful for this net that allows me to do my work. This is contentment, being fully present to what you have, rather than always reaching for what you do not have." Takeshi watched the sunset in silence, and for perhaps the first time in his adult life, he was actually present for it. He saw the way the light changed moment by moment, the colors shifting from gold to orange to deep crimson. He heard the waves and the cry of seabirds. He felt the cooling air on his skin, and in that simple presence, he touched something he had been seeking through all his achievements, a sense of being genuinely alive, genuinely here, genuinely engaged with the miracle of existence. "How do I learn this?" Takeshi asked quietly. "How do I learn to be present like you are? I have spent 30 years training myself to always be thinking ahead, always be planning, always be achieving. I do not know how to simply be here." Masaru smiled. "You learn the same way you learn anything, through practice. Start with small things. When you eat your next meal, actually eat it. Feel the food in your mouth. Taste the flavors. Notice the textures. Do not think about business or read your phone or plan your day. Just eat. When you walk, actually walk. Feel your feet on the ground. Notice your surroundings. Breathe the air. Do not walk while lost in thought about where you are going. Just walk." He set down his completed net and turned his full attention to Takeshi. The mind has been trained to always be somewhere else, and retraining it takes time and patience. But every moment you choose presence over distraction, Every time you choose to actually be where you are practicing contentment. And slowly, over time, you will discover that the abundance you sought was here all along. You were just too busy seeking it to notice it. Takeshi stayed in the village for another week, and each evening he sat with Masaru, learning to mend nets, learning to watch sunsets, learning to be present. When he returned to his city life, his external circumstances had not changed. He still had his business, his properties, his wealth, but his internal experience had transformed. He began to practice what Masaru had taught him. When he ate with attention, and discovered that even simple food could bring genuine pleasure when he was actually present to taste it. When he walked with awareness, and discovered beauty in his familiar city streets that he had never noticed before. When he worked with full engagement rather than anxious striving, and found the work itself could be satisfying regardless of outcomes. His business associates noticed the change. Where once Takeshi had been driven and restless, now he seemed calm and present. Where once he had chased every opportunity with desperate intensity, now he engaged with work with focused clarity, but without attachment to results. Paradoxically, his business thrived more because he was making better decisions from a place of presence rather than from anxiety and grasping. Years later, Takeshi returned to the village to visit Masaru. The old fisherman was even older now, his body more bent, his movements slower, but his presence was unchanged, that same quality of contentment, of being fully here, fully alive. "Teacher," Takeshi said, bowing to the old man, "you gave me a treasure more valuable than all my wealth. You taught me that contentment is not found in circumstances but in presence. That true wealth is the ability to receive what is here, rather than always reaching for what is not here. I still live in the city, still work, still have possessions, but I am no longer imprisoned by them. I hold everything lightly now, and in that lightness, I have found a peace I never knew existed." Masaru laughed. That same gentle laugh Takeshi remembered from their first meeting. "You found what was already yours. I showed you nothing you did not already possess. The capacity for presence, for contentment, for receiving life's abundance, these were always in you. You just needed permission to stop seeking long enough to notice them." This teaching about presence as the foundation of contentment, about being able to receive what is already here, rather than always reaching for more, is perhaps the most important teaching for our modern world. We live in a culture of perpetual dissatisfaction, constantly being told that happiness lies in the next purchase, the next achievement, the next destination. We are trained to always be seeking, always be improving, always be somewhere other than where we are. And this constant seeking makes genuine contentment impossible, because contentment requires presence, requires actually being here to receive what life is offering. As you rest here, can you practice Masaru's teaching? Can you receive what this moment is offering? The comfort of your bed, the simple miracle of breathing, the gift of having this time to rest, the countless unseen conditions that support your existence, the people who built your home, who grew your food, who created the peace that allows you to rest safely. All of this is abundance. All of this is wealth beyond measure, but only if you are present to receive it. You do not need more to be content. You need to be here for what you already have. Our 11th story takes us to a monastery in the deep mountains where an old nun named Etsuko had been living in solitude for 30 years. Etsuko had chosen this remote life not because she was running away from the world, but because she had discovered that in silence and simplicity, truths became clear that were hidden in the noise and complexity of ordinary life. One autumn, a successful author named Yumi came to visit Etsuko. Yumi had written several best-selling books about spirituality and mindfulness, had lectured around the world, and was considered an expert on Buddhist philosophy. But Yumi carried a secret shame despite all her knowledge and all her success teaching others about peace and contentment. She herself was deeply unhappy. She felt like a fraud, someone who talked about wisdom she did not truly embody. When Yumi arrived at Etsuko's simple hermitage, she found the old nun sweeping leaves from the path, moving with unhurried grace. Completely absorbed in the simple task, Yumi watched for several minutes before Etsuko noticed her presence. "Welcome," Etsuko said with a warm smile. "You have come a long way. Please, sit and rest. I will make tea." They sat together in Etsuko's small, bare room. The simplicity was striking. A few cushions, a low table, a simple altar, nothing else. Yet, the space felt complete, lacking nothing. As Etsuko prepared tea with complete attention, Yumi felt her carefully prepared questions beginning to dissolve. "Teacher," Yumi finally said, "I have come seeking your guidance. I teach others about mindfulness and contentment, but I do not embody these qualities myself. I feel like a hypocrite. My life is filled with stress, with striving, with a constant sense of not being enough despite all my success. How can I teach others what I myself have not mastered?" Etsuko poured tea into 2 simple cups, the movement so present, so complete, that the act itself seemed like a teaching. "Tell me," she said gently, "what do you teach people about mindfulness?" Yumi recited what she had written in her books, what she had spoken about in hundreds of lectures. "I teach that mindfulness is paying attention to the present moment with openness and non-judgment. I teach practices for developing this quality meditation, mindful breathing, bringing awareness to daily activities." "And do you practice what you teach?" Etsuko asked. "I try," Yumi said. "I meditate every morning. I have a structured mindfulness practice. I use all the techniques I teach others." Etsuko nodded slowly. "And yet you are not at peace. Why do you think this is?" Yumi struggled to answer. "I do not know. Perhaps I am not practicing correctly. Perhaps I need to practice more, or more intensely." Etsuko smiled gently. "Or perhaps you have made mindfulness into another achievement to pursue, another thing to master, another way to prove your worth. You practice mindfulness to become more mindful, to be a better teacher of mindfulness, to achieve some ideal of perfect presence. But this is not mindfulness. This is striving, wearing the costume of mindfulness." She lifted her teacup with both hands, holding it with complete attention. "Watch me drink this tea. I am not drinking it to become better at drinking tea. I am not drinking it to prove I am a mindful tea drinker. I am not measuring my tea drinking against some ideal. I am simply drinking tea, completely present to this experience, because this is what is happening in this moment. This is true mindfulness, not as a technique to master, but as a simple way of being fully present to life as it unfolds." Yumi felt something cracking open inside her. "But I have built my entire career on teaching mindfulness. If I am not actually embodying it, then everything I have done is false." "Not false," Etsuko said gently, "but perhaps incomplete. You have been teaching the technique of mindfulness without embodying the spirit of mindfulness. The technique is valuable meditation practices, breathing exercises. These can be helpful tools, but they are not the destination. They are fingers pointing at the moon. You have become very skilled at describing the finger. But have you looked at the moon?" She set down her teacup. "Let me tell you what I think has happened. You learned about mindfulness intellectually, understood it conceptually, and then created a successful career teaching these concepts to others. But somewhere along the way, mindfulness became your product, your identity, your source of validation. It stopped being a lived experience and became something you performed, something you used to prove your worth. And this is why you feel like a fraud. Because on some level you know that what you are teaching and how you are living are not aligned." Yumi felt tears beginning to form. Everything Etsuko was saying was true. She had made mindfulness into another achievement, another thing to master and teach and build an identity around. She had completely missed the actual experience of being present because she was too busy performing presence, teaching presence, being the mindfulness expert. What should I do? Yumi asked, her voice small and vulnerable. Should I stop teaching? Should I confess to my students that I am a fraud? Etsuko shook her head. You are not a fraud, you are simply human. You got caught in a very common trap using spiritual practice to build an ego identity rather than to see through the illusion of ego. The question is not what you should do externally, but how you should be internally. Can you teach mindfulness from actual presence rather than from performing presence? Can you share not as an expert who has mastered something, but as a fellow traveler who is still learning, still practicing, still discovering? She stood and walked to the window, looking out at the mountains. I will tell you something. I have lived here alone for 30 years. Do you know what I have learned? That I still forget to be present, that my mind still wanders, that I still have moments of reactivity and judgment. The difference is that I no longer make this a problem. I no longer believe that mindfulness means never being unmindful. That presence means never being distracted. That peace means never experiencing agitation. She turned to look at Yumi. True practice is not about achieving some permanent state of perfect mindfulness. It is about noticing when you are lost in thought and returning to presence, again and again, thousands of times, without judging yourself for having wandered. It is about being gentle with yourself when you are unmindful, rather than using your unmindfulness as evidence that you are failing. The practice is not perfection. The practice is kind, patient returning. Etsuko returned to a seat. Here is what I suggest. For the next week, stay here with me. Do not prepare lectures or write. Do not think about how you will teach this to others. Simply practice being present for your actual lived experience, without any agenda of becoming better at it or achieving anything. Sweep paths when paths need sweeping. Prepare meals when meals need preparing. Sit in silence when silence calls, and notice when your mind wants to turn even these simple acts into achievements, into things to master, into content for future teaching. Yumi stayed for a week, and it was one of the most challenging weeks of her life. Every time she swept or cooked or sat in silence, her mind wanted to analyze the experience, to think about how she would teach this to others, to measure whether she was doing it correctly. But each time, following Etsuko's gentle guidance, she would notice this pattern and simply return to the actual experience, just sweeping, just cooking, just sitting, not for any purpose beyond the activity itself. Gradually, something shifted. Yumi began to experience moments of genuine presence, free from the constant self-monitoring and performing that had characterized her mindfulness practice. These moments were quiet, ordinary, nothing special, but they were real in a way that all her years of structured practice had not been. She was actually here, actually present, actually experiencing her life directly rather than through the filter of expertise and performance. On her last evening at the Hermitage, Yumi sat with Etsuko, watching the sunset. They sat in silence for a long time, and for once, Yumi was not thinking about anything else, not analyzing the experience, not planning how to describe it to others. She was simply here, watching the light fade, feeling the cool evening air, present to this moment exactly as it was. Thank you, Yumi said finally. You have shown me the difference between knowing about mindfulness and actually being mindful, between teaching presence and living presence. I do not know if I will continue my career as a teacher, but if I do, it will be from a very different place. Etsuko smiled. Whether you teach or not is up to you. What matters is that you live with integrity, that your words and your being are aligned. If you teach, teach from your actual experience, including your struggles and imperfections. Do not teach from a place of having arrived, but from a place of honest practice. Your students will learn more from your authenticity than from any perfect technique you could offer them. When Yumi returned to her city life, she made significant changes. She reduced her teaching schedule drastically, declining many lucrative speaking opportunities. She revised her books to include more honesty about her own struggles, more acknowledgement of the gap between understanding concepts and living them. Some of her followers were disappointed by this shift, preferring the confident expert to the honest practitioner, but others were deeply relieved, finally feeling they had permission to be imperfect in their own practice. Yumi discovered that teaching from authenticity, from honest acknowledgement of her own ongoing practice rather than from performed expertise, was actually more effective. Her students connected with her vulnerability, with her willingness to say, "I struggle with this too," with her embodiment of mindfulness as an ongoing practice rather than a perfected achievement. This teaching about the difference between performing spirituality and living spiritually, about authentic practice versus expert performance, is crucial in our social media age where everyone is performing their best life, their perfect practice, their enlightened state. We create carefully curated versions of ourselves, showing only the successes and hiding the struggles, presenting ourselves as having arrived when we are still very much on the journey. But this performance creates a double suffering. First, we suffer from the gap between our performed self and our actual experience, carrying the secret shame of not being what we claim to be. Second, we create suffering for others who compare themselves to our performed perfection and find themselves lacking, not realizing that what they are comparing themselves to is not real. True practice, as Etsuko taught Yumi, is not about perfection, but about honest, patient, returning to presence again and again. It is about being gentle with yourself when you wander, about acknowledging your struggles rather than hiding them, about teaching from your actual experience rather than from performed expertise. This authenticity is not weakness. It is the foundation of genuine wisdom and genuine connection. As you rest here, can you practice this authenticity? Can you let go of any performance, any need to be resting perfectly, any need to be a good meditator or a successful sleeper? Can you simply be here, exactly as you are, with whatever is actually present, restlessness or calm, thoughts or silence, comfort or discomfort, without performing any particular state? Your authentic experience in this moment, exactly as it is perfect practice. Nothing needs to be added or taken away. Our 12th and final story takes us to a monastery where the abbot, a woman named Sayuri, who had practiced for 65 years, was preparing for her death. Sayuri had been diagnosed with a terminal illness and had perhaps weeks left to live. The monks and nuns of the monastery were deeply distressed. Sayuri had been their teacher, their guide, their anchor. How would they continue without her? Many wept openly, struggling to accept the impending loss. But Sayuri herself was completely at peace. She continued her daily routines as much as her failing body allowed, teaching when students came with questions, sitting in meditation, taking walks in the garden. There was no fear in her, no resistance to what was coming, no despair about leaving life behind. A young nun named Emiko, who had been especially close to Sayuri, finally gathered the courage to ask, "Teacher, how can you be so peaceful? You are dying. How can you face this without fear, without sadness, without wishing things were different?" Sayuri was sitting in the garden, wrapped in blankets against the autumn chill, watching leaves fall from the trees. She gestured for Emiko to sit beside her. "Watch these leaves falling," she said. "Are they sad to be leaving the tree? Are they resisting their falling? Are they afraid?" Emiko watched the leaves drift down, settling on the ground in scattered patterns. "No, they simply fall. It is their nature." "Yes," Sayuri said gently, "and dying is my nature now. This body has served its purpose. It has carried me through 68 years of this precious human life. It has walked and worked and rested and practiced, and now it is time for it to return to the earth, to become part of the great cycle of transformation. Why would I resist this? Why would I wish it to be different?" She pulled her blankets tighter, her frail body vulnerable to the cold. "Let me tell you what I have learned in 65 years of practice. Life and death are not opposites. They are part of the same continuum, like breathing in and breathing out. Each moment, cells in this body are dying and new cells are being born. Each moment, I am both living and dying. Death is not some separate event that will happen in the future. It is happening right now, has always been happening. Life is a process of continuous dying and being reborn. Emiko listened, tears streaming down her face. But we will miss you. The monastery will not be the same without you. How can you leave us so calmly when we need you? Sayuri reached out and took Emiko's hand, holding it gently in her own frail grip. Sweet Emiko, you do not need me. You never needed me. What you needed was to discover the wisdom that is already within you, and I simply helped point you toward it. That wisdom does not die when this body dies. It is eternal, unchanging, always present. You can access it anytime by turning your attention inward, by being present to your own Buddha nature. She paused, watching more leaves fall. Besides, where do you imagine I am going? Do you think death means I disappear? That I cease to exist? This body will cease. Yes, the personality you call Sayuri will dissolve, but the awareness that looks through these eyes, the consciousness that experiences this moment, where do you imagine that goes? Emiko struggled to understand. I do not know. Teacher, it goes nowhere, because it is not a thing that can go anywhere. Sayuri explained. Consciousness is like space. When this building eventually crumbles, does the space inside it disappear? No, the form that contained it is gone, but space itself is unchanged, undivided, still fully present. I am that space. Emiko, not this body, not this personality, but the aware spaciousness in which all experience arises. That cannot die because it was never born. She smiled at Emiko's confused expression. I know this is difficult to understand intellectually, but you can know it directly through your own experience. Right now, notice the awareness that is hearing my words, that is seeing these falling leaves, that knows Emiko is sad. This awareness is the same awareness that looks through my eyes, that looks through every being's eyes. It is not personal. It does not belong to Sayuri or to Emiko. It simply is, eternal and unchanging. When you recognize this awareness as what you truly are, death loses its terror because you see that what you truly are cannot die. Over the following days, Emiko spent as much time as possible with Sayuri, absorbing not just her words, but her being, the way she met her, approaching death with complete acceptance and even a kind of curiosity. One afternoon, Sayuri called all the monks and nuns together for a final teaching. My dear students, she said, her voice weak but clear, I have perhaps days left in this body, and I want to share with you what I consider the most important teaching I can offer. It is this: do not waste your precious life resisting what is. Do not waste your energy wishing things were different than they are. This moment, exactly as it is the only reality. Everything else, your memories of the past, your plans for the future, your ideas about how things should be, these are all thoughts, and thoughts are not reality. She paused to catch her breath, her body clearly struggling. I am dying, and this is reality. I could spend my remaining time wishing I were not dying, fighting against this reality, making myself and everyone around me miserable with my resistance. Or I can accept this reality and be fully present for whatever time remains, meeting each moment with openness and presence. I choose presence. I choose reality over fantasy. One of the older monks asked, but teacher, is it not natural to wish for more life? Is it not human to resist death? It is natural. Yes, Sayuri agreed. The body has a survival instinct. The personality fears its dissolution. These are natural responses. But we are not only our bodies and personalities, we are also the awareness that witnesses these responses. We can feel the fear without being controlled by it. We can notice the resistance without being identified with it. We can acknowledge the wish for more time while also accepting that our time is finishing. She looked around at all the assembled students with deep love. Each of you will die. Some sooner, some later, but all will die. The question is not whether you will die, but how you will live, knowing that death is certain. Will you postpone living until conditions are perfect? Will you waste your precious time resisting the natural changes that are constantly occurring? Or will you choose to be fully present for the life you actually have, in all its imperfection, in all its impermanence? Sayuri's voice grew softer. My gift to you in my dying is this teaching. Life is now, not yesterday, not tomorrow, but now. Contentment is now, peace is now, love is now. Everything you seek is available in this moment if you are present to receive it. Do not wait. Do not postpone. Do not believe that life will begin when conditions are right. Life is already happening. Be here for it. 3 days later, in the early morning, Sayuri died peacefully in her sleep. Her face held a slight smile, and her body was completely relaxed. The monastery mourned her passing, but they also celebrated the teaching she had embodied in her dying, that death can be met with acceptance and peace, that resistance creates suffering, while acceptance creates space for grace. In the months and years that followed, the students found that Sayuri's presence remained with them, not as a ghost or spirit, but as an internalized wisdom, a way of being that she had transmitted through her living and her dying. When they faced difficulties, they would remember her acceptance. When they were tempted to resist reality, they would remember her teaching about meeting what is. When they feared death, they would remember her peaceful passing. Emiko, in particular, was transformed by witnessing Sayuri's death. She had learned that death is not the enemy, not the ultimate tragedy, but simply another transformation in the endless dance of form and formlessness. She learned that what we truly are, the awareness behind all experience, cannot die, and this understanding freed her from the prison of fear that had unconsciously governed so much of her life. Years later, when Emiko herself became a teacher, students would ask her about death, about how to face the fear of mortality, and she would tell them about Sayuri, about the leaves falling from the tree, about the choice to meet reality with acceptance rather than resistance. Death is not the problem, she would say. Resistance to death is the problem. Death is simply change, transformation, the return of form to formlessness. When you understand that what you truly are is the unchanging awareness that witnesses all transformation, death becomes just another experience to be met with presence and acceptance. This teaching about accepting impermanence and meeting death with peace is perhaps the most profound teaching Buddhism offers. We spend our entire lives running from the reality of death, pretending it will not happen, or that it is so far in the future we need not concern ourselves with it. But this denial of death creates a denial of life, because when we are not willing to face our mortality, we cannot fully embrace our aliveness. The Buddha taught that contemplating death is not morbid, but liberating. When we truly understand that our time is limited, that this body will eventually fail, that everything we know and everyone we love will eventually pass away, we stop wasting time on what does not matter. We stop postponing joy until conditions are perfect. We stop taking for granted the precious miracle of being alive. We become present to the life we actually have, rather than the life we imagine we will have someday. As you rest here, can you practice Sayuri's teaching? Can you accept the reality of this moment exactly as it is, without wishing it were different? Your body may be tired or restless. Your mind may be quiet or active. Sleep may come easily or elude you for a while. Can you meet whatever is actually here with the same acceptance Sayuri brought to her death? Not passive resignation, but active acceptance, the recognition that this moment is what it is, and fighting against it only creates suffering. This is reality. This is your life. This is what is here to be experienced. Can you say yes to it? And now, As we draw near the completion of our journey together through these 12 tales, let us rest in the wisdom they have offered. We began with Akira, who learned that seeking contentment prevents us from experiencing the contentment that is already here. We learned that the harder we chase peace, the more it eludes us, because peace is not a future destination, but a present reality, available when we stop seeking it and simply be where we are. We traveled with Daichi the fisherman, who discovered that contentment comes not from having more but from being present to what we already have, from receiving the abundance that surrounds us in every moment rather than always reaching for what we lack. We sat in the garden with Hana, who learned that intellectual understanding is not the same as direct experience, that knowing about wisdom is vastly different from living wisdom, and that the Dharma is not in books, but in the actual experience of being fully present to life. We met Takeo the wealthy merchant and Ryokan the beggar, who showed us that freedom comes not from how much we own, but from our relationship to what we own, from holding everything lightly rather than grasping tightly, from recognizing that security cannot be found in external possessions, but only in the spacious acceptance that comes from letting go. We witnessed Kaito's release from the prison of guilt, learning that true responsibility for past harm is not endless self-punishment, but honest acknowledgement, genuine remorse, and transformation into someone who creates healing rather than continuing to create harm through self-torture. We watched Dogen sweep floors for 60 years, discovering that there are no ordinary moments, that every action is an opportunity for complete presence, and that the meaning of life is not in grand achievements, but in showing up fully for whatever is here, whether sweeping a floor or sitting with a dying person. We climbed the mountain with Yuki and drank tea with the old woman, learning that direct experience is more valuable than accumulated knowledge, that being present to a cup of tea can teach us more than a library of books, and that the Dharma is always here, always now, always available in the simple act of being fully engaged with what is. We sat in meditation with Sota, who learned to let go of progress, narratives, and measuring spiritual advancement, discovering that practice is not about getting somewhere, but about being here, that peaceful states and difficult states are both complete, and that contentment does not depend on having particular experiences, but on being present to whatever experience arises. We worked clay with Haruki the potter, who released his grip on perfectionism and discovered that beauty exists not despite imperfection, but because of it, that our humanity is not a flaw to be transcended, but a quality to be embraced, and that worth is not earned through flawlessness, but is inherent in existence itself. We fished with Masaru, who taught that true wealth is not what we own, but what we can actually experience. That presence transforms poverty into abundance, while absence transforms riches into emptiness, and that the capacity to receive what is here is more valuable than any accumulation of what is not here. We sat in silence with Etsuko and Yumi, learning the difference between performing spirituality and living it, between expertise and authenticity, between teaching from having arrived and teaching from honest practice, discovering that our struggles and imperfections are not obstacles to wisdom, but invitations to genuine practice. And finally, we witnessed Sayuri's peaceful death, learning that accepting impermanence rather than resisting it is the gateway to true peace, that what we truly are cannot die because it was never born, and that meeting reality exactly as it is, even when reality is death, creates the space for grace. 12 stories, 12 teachings, but all pointing to the same truth. The truth that the Buddha discovered 2,500 years ago under the Bodhi tree, and that countless beings have rediscovered since. The truth is simply this: contentment is here, now, available in this very moment when we stop seeking it and simply be present to what is. You do not need to achieve anything to deserve peace. You do not need to become someone different to be worthy of rest. You do not need to fix yourself, improve yourself, perfect yourself before you are allowed to be content. You are enough, exactly as you are, right now, in this moment. All the seeking, all the striving, all the measuring yourself against impossible standards, all the postponing of contentment until conditions are perfect. All of this can be released. Not because these patterns are bad or wrong, but simply because they are unnecessary. They are like carrying a heavy stone for miles, believing you must carry it, only to discover you can set it down anytime you choose. Set it down now. Set down the burden of needing to be somewhere else, someone else, some other way. Set down the exhausting work of constantly measuring your progress, judging your worth, seeking what you imagine you lack. Set down the resistance to this moment exactly as it is. Set it all down and simply rest in the simple, ordinary, miraculous reality of being here, being now, being alive. Your breath continues without any effort from you, in and out, in and out. A rhythm that has sustained you since your first moment of life and will continue until your last. You do not make this happen. You do not control it. You simply receive it. Breath after breath. The gift of life being offered again and again. Your heart beats steadily in your chest, pumping blood through miles of vessels, nourishing every cell in your body, maintaining the intricate dance of life without any conscious direction from you. You did not create this body. You do not manage its countless processes. You are simply the awareness that experiences this body, that knows it is alive, that witnesses the miracle of existence expressing itself through this particular form. And this awareness that you are, this consciousness that looks through your eyes and experiences this moment. This is what the Buddha was pointing to when he spoke of Buddha nature, the awakened mind that is our deepest nature. Not something you must achieve or develop, but what you already are beneath all the layers of seeking and striving and identification with temporary forms. This awareness has been here throughout all 12 stories. It was here when Akira learned to stop seeking. It was here when Daichi learned to receive abundance. It was here when Hana touched the soil. It was here when Kaito released his guilt. It was here through every teaching, every insight, every moment of recognition. Because this awareness is what you are. It is always here. It never changes. It cannot be damaged or improved. It simply is, eternally present, witnessing all experience without being touched by any experience. Rest in this awareness now, not as something separate from you, not as something to understand intellectually, but as what you most fundamentally are. You are not your thoughts about yourself. You are not your stories about who you are or who you should be. You are not your achievements or your failures, your successes or your mistakes. You are the awareness that knows all of these things, the consciousness in which all experience arises and passes, and this awareness is always at peace. It does not struggle against what is. It does not wish things were different. It simply witnesses, simply knows, simply is. The thoughts may be turbulent, but the awareness of thoughts is still. The emotions may be intense, but the awareness of emotions is spacious. The body may be restless, but the awareness of the body is calm. You are that awareness. You have always been that awareness. You will always be that awareness. Everything else, every thought, every feeling, every sensation, every story arises and passes within this awareness, like clouds passing through the vast sky. The clouds come and go, but the sky remains, unchanging, untouched, eternally present. Let yourself settle into this recognition now. You do not need to make it happen. You do not need to achieve some special state. You simply notice what is already true, what has always been true. Awareness is here. Presence is here. The peace you have been seeking through all 12 stories, through all your years of living, is here, now, not as something separate to be found, but as what you are. Breathing continues, the body rests, thoughts arise and pass, and through it all, awareness remains, witnessing everything, touched by nothing, eternally at peace. This is your true home, not some distant destination you must travel to, but the place you have never left. You are home. You have always been home. You were home when you felt most lost, Home when you were most desperately seeking. Home in every moment of your life, because home is not a place, but a recognition of what you are. And in this home, there is nothing to do, nowhere to go, no one to become. There is just this, just now, just being. The simplest, most ordinary, most miraculous reality. You are alive, you are aware, you are here. Let everything else fall away now. All the stories from tonight, beautiful as they were, can dissolve like mist in morning sun. All the teachings, valuable as they are, can settle into silence. What remains is just this moment, this breath, this awareness, this peace that needs nothing added to it, nothing taken away. Your eyes are closed or closing, your body is heavy, sinking deeper into the surface beneath you. The boundary between waking and sleeping begins to blur, becomes less important. Whether you sleep or remain awake, whether dreams come or silence remains, all of it is fine, all of it is welcome, all of it is held in the vast, accepting awareness that you are. The night stretches out before you, offering hours of rest, hours of release from the day's activities and concerns. You do not need to make anything happen. You do not need to achieve sleep or produce peace. You simply allow, simply receive, simply rest in what is already here. May you sleep deeply and peacefully. May your dreams, if they come, be gentle. May you wake tomorrow refreshed and renewed, carrying something from these teachings, even if you cannot remember the specific stories, carrying the recognition that contentment is always available, always here, always now. May you remember, even if only briefly, that you are enough exactly as you are, that this moment is enough exactly as it is, that the abundance you seek is here in the simple miracle of being alive, of breathing, of being aware. May you walk through your days with more presence, more acceptance, more gentleness toward yourself and others. May you remember that there is nowhere to get to, that you are already home, that peace is not a future achievement, but a present recognition. And may you know that you are held, always, in the great compassion of existence itself, in the vast awareness that includes all beings, all experiences, all of life's joys and sorrows. You are not alone. You have never been alone. You are part of the great whole, connected to all that is through the shared ground of consciousness, through the Buddha nature that expresses itself through infinite forms but is always one, always whole, always at peace. Rest now, dear one. Rest completely. Let go of everything. The seeking can stop. The striving can cease. The measuring and judging and comparing can fall silent. What remains is just this breathing being, this aware presence, this precious, temporary, miraculous expression of life experiencing itself. All the teachers from our stories, Akira and Jiro, Daichi and Kenji, Hana and Chio, all of them, they are with you now. Not as separate beings, but as aspects of the wisdom that lives in you, that has always lived in you, that is your deepest nature. Their teachings are your own deepest knowing, rising to the surface, reminding you of what you have always known, but perhaps forgotten. You are home, you are safe, you are held, you are loved. Not because you have earned it or achieved it, but because love is your nature, because safety is your ground, because home is what you are. Sleep now, or rest in wakefulness. Dream, or rest in dreamless dark. All paths lead to the same peace, the same recognition, the same truth. You are awareness itself. You are the Buddha nature. You are home. Rest, rest, rest. Everything is well. Everything has always been well, even in difficulty, even in struggle. Underneath it all is this fundamental okayness, this basic goodness, this deep peace that nothing can touch. Breathe, be, rest. The journey is complete. You have arrived where you always were. Welcome home.